Hi, we're going to listen to these two geniuses today.
Or the aliens. Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so this is Alison Tiemann and Brian Martinez from Honeybadger Radio, okay? This is a group of people that discuss men's rights, okay? And what they're talking about here is recently Lauren Southern appeared on the Triggernometry show, right, to talk about getting out of a toxic marriage and to talk about some of her opinions on the Manosphere, red pill community, and how she sort of changed, you know, a few of the views that she had in the past. Okay, now, and I'll link down below. I'll link down below her interview with the Triggernometry, and I'll also link down below this Honeybadger video that I'm responding to. Okay, now before I watched the Honeybadger's response video, I was kind of hoping that they would come at this from a point of view of having a little bit of sympathy for Lauren Southern, okay? You know, I was kind of thinking, you know, because, I mean, MRAs aren't always as extreme in their views as what the red pillars are, okay? And just because somebody sticks up for men's rights, it doesn't mean that they have to be anti-woman, okay? Like, and sympathising with men that have, like, been in abusive or toxic relationships and wanting to sort of help men who've been in that situation and be like a voice for men to say that, you know, men, this stuff happens to men as well. Okay, having that kind of wanting to help men attitude, it doesn't mean that you have to be unsympathetic to women, okay? That's what I thought, okay? But, you know, obviously, I'm a bit stupid because having been familiar with the Manosphere as long as what I have been, okay? Well, let's just watch and see, okay?
Okay, we're going to start playing it now then, okay? Here we go.
What happens to these mugs?
This is something I haven't talked about at all publicly yet, but I've been
This is
meaning
very
to for a while.
avant-garde. It's no
A lot of the
image
Sad
whatsoever.
music.
Oh, there she
Sad-
is. There she is.
Yeah. Sad music.
Yes, they play sad music for their intro if it's somebody who is talking about something that is emotional to them, okay? Just like they do in other videos.
One of which, the most famous one, and what it's sort of about, it was the discovery that I was donor conceived. And I learned through a DNA test that I was actually conceived in a clinic in central London run by a woman called Mary Bart.
So what is your point here? Okay, we already know where they're going with this, is that they, people in the Manosphere do not like it if you sympathise with women, okay? They don't like it if you humanise women. That's it. They think if a man has been in a toxic or abusive relationship, if he's been treated badly and badly hurt by a woman, that he deserves sympathy. You know, Alison Tiemann has said before, you know, that men, you know, should be able to be vulnerable, okay, if they're in pain, okay. But the Manosphere absolutely hate it when it's a woman, okay. They absolutely hate it if you humanise women. When it's like, to sympathise with men doesn't mean you have to stop sympathising with women, okay? Or if you're a man's rights activist and you want to sort of be available to say, like, raise awareness for like men who have been victims of abuse by women, okay? Or you want to get more support for men because, you know, I understand that there are a lot of people who like, when they picture an abuser, they picture it being a man abusing a woman, okay, when women can be just as abusive as men, alright? So, you know, I think men's rights activists being there to sort of support men and to, you know, point out that men can be victims too and get help for men that are victims is a good thing. But where I take issue with, like, some men's rights activists and a lot of the Manosphere and red pill community and all that is the way that they then get angry if anybody sympathizes with a woman. Like, to encourage people to be sympathetic to men, you have to try to get people to not be sympathetic to a woman. And you get this sort of attitude of like, oh, you're treating women like victims if you offer them any sympathy. When, you know, something like abuse in a relationship, that's not a gendered issue, okay? Both men and women can be victims of abuse, okay? And it's okay to sympathise with somebody, whether they're a man or a woman.
All right, but let's play the rest of this trailer. So we got sad music, violins, Lauren Southern saying, I've never told anyone this before. Very sad stuff, guys. Very sad. Okay, so let's listen.
Internet narratives about how people ought to live their lives. You kind of embodied some of those ideas in your own life, and it went spectacularly wrong.
It's the reality pill, not the red pill, not the blue pill, not any of these things. Towards the end of our marriage, I found a list in my husband's office of every single media figure that...
I'm gonna pause.
Oh, by the way, for those of you who are joining us for something other than the mug content, she married a Fed. She was a counterculture figure that married a Fed. You know, I guess she was really capturing that kind of Romeo and Juliet across enemy lines kind of quality there. But it didn't work out apparently.
Okay, Alison keeps, throughout this video, she keeps over and over again mentioning the fact that Lauren Southern married a Fed, and she keeps bringing it up as like this is the reason why she had problems in her marriage. It was all because she married a Fed, and she shouldn't have married a Fed. It's all her fault for marrying a Fed, right? Okay, and like, she married somebody who is abusive, okay, according to her, okay, which, you know, when it's men who say they were in an abusive relationship, these people always believe them, so I don't see why people shouldn't believe Lauren Southern. But anyway, and when she like was interviewed and had an article wrote about this, like the woman who wrote the article, she said that she thought the guy that Lauren Southern was married to was a narcissistic psychopath. Okay, and like. Well, this is the problem, right? It doesn't matter what he did for a living, or, well, maybe what he did for a living made it worse, I don't know. But the fact is that she was married to somebody who was abusive to her. That's the issue, okay? And it just annoys me slightly that this Alison, like, doesn't mention that. She just keeps going over and over again, like, oh, well, you married a Fed, you had problems because you married a Fed. It's like, no, it's because you married somebody who was abusive to her, okay? And it's quite, like, disgusting that they just want to sweep that under the carpet.
Yeah, but her life was still really hard, guys. And this Fed she married, totally an example of what the red pill / manosphere / right is all about. The Fed that she married. I'm serious. That's her whole, like, I had this bad experience with a federal agent. This means that all the people on the right, the manosphere, the red pill, etc., they're all the problem because I fucked up.
And it's interesting how straight away anybody in the manosphere will say, like, if a woman marries somebody who's toxic or abusive, that she is the one that effed up, okay? But they don't say that to the men, okay? It's like you've got to be sympathetic to the men, or you've got to deflect. If it's a woman who says that she's been abused by a man, then you have to deflect blame onto the woman, because that's meant to somehow make it sound like the abuser's not so bad. Okay, but there's this sort of, always this attitude of like, you know, the men can never do anything wrong. It's always the woman who's the logical, irrational one. It's always women that treat men badly. And every relationship that happens that goes wrong, it's always the woman's fault. And there's that sort of like, that attitude throughout the red pill manosphere, Christian conservatives. And, you know, as I've shown before, like, on my channel, I mean, I've talked about this before on my channel, like, even some of the Christian conservatives from the Whatever podcast actually sat there and said that if a woman's, like, being beaten up, she should still stay in a relationship and put up with it.
If there's someone that's very, very young and goes into a marriage and has kids when they're like 18, 19, 20, a year into the relationship, it gets really, really abusive. Even though it might be rare from what you guys think. If it would happen, what would you recommend for those people? Would they divorce, or do you want them to keep going in a relationship?
Keep going, can't divorce. That's not a real thing.
Even though it might be like physically abusive?
You gotta endure. People are too...
You want to stick in a
People
relationship?
are just... I mean, people nowadays are just...
For anyone that might be in that situation, what would you recommend?
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll tell you what. It is such an extreme example that I can't give a prescription for what other people should do.
What about if two people get married, have a kid, and then the wife starts cheating? Do you think they should divorce?
Jesus himself said in cases of adultery, divorce is
So you think that divorce is worse than physical abuse?
For the children?
Sorry, you think that cheating is worse than physical abuse?
For the children, yes.
So that is the lack of empathy that you get for women throughout all of these communities, throughout the manosphere, okay? And you can say hashtag not all, but it's a lot of them, okay? And, you know, this is why, like, some women, like, I mean, Lauren Southern, she's somebody who has been very, you know, pro men's rights, has, you know, been an activist who's stuck up for men. And, you know, now she's sort of had this bad experience and she realised that, well, not everything she's told is true. It's not always true that, like, you know, men are always good and women are always bad, okay? And, like, you know, she's not the only one who's come into that conclusion. Like, I mean, same with Sydney Watson. Like, I mean, Sydney Watson's sort of changed her views a little bit as well.
I mean, my experiences have definitely colored my view of everything. I went through a period probably towards the end of last year, the beginning of this year, where I just felt mad all the time. Because
So what happened, Sydney? Tell people who may not be aware.
So I don't know how much detail I can go in just because of the legal components to this, but I was involved with a co-host on a show with a network, a conservative network. And my experience was extremely, extremely negative. I felt like there was a lot of treatment that went on that was negative because I'm a woman. And I never experienced that previously, which is why a lot of my, you know, earlier viewpoints were I was much more likely to call out silly things that I saw happening from women, whereas now I kind of get where they're coming from. And I never had that previously. And so now I'm definitely colored by it. I mean, my experience is, to be honest with you, now that I've sort of, if I can be honest about it, there's a lot of people like this that exist in the world. Yeah. Again, I don't think that they outnumber the normal people. I always, you know, I really do believe that normal people make up the majority. They just don't concern themselves with a lot of this. But I do think that there are some really toxic elements and really messed up elements of the right wing. But people don't understand that these experiences that I had are feeding into how I presently feel and presently talk about the environment that I'm in, this political environment. The worst part is, and this kind of speaks to what we were talking about earlier with relation to, you know, relationships and body counts and blah, blah, blah. I have a couple girlfriends, one of whom is a decently well-known pundit, so to speak. And she did all the right things. Married, babies, blah. And she feels like she got such a crappy deal because she tried to do everything by the book. Exactly how they tell you to do it. You know, you find the person, you get married, you have the kids, you try to be the stay-at-home wife, you try to do all these things. And her partner ended up doing some not okay things in the relationship, abandoned the relationship, and now she's here holding these pieces and she's going, I don't know how to reconcile these two things. I don't know how to reconcile the way my life used to be, the way that I used to think about the world, and now these broken pieces that I have. How do I put this all together to form a coherent understanding of what's going on around me? And I feel like that sometimes too, where I kind of look at all the things that went down, all the things that happened, and all the people who get on the internet and say, you're a liar and you're a feminist and you're just making this up, you know, in order to further your own ends, which just, by the way, if a woman, particularly on the right wing, talks about a negative experience, particularly that relates to sexual harassment or anything like that, there's kind of no net positive that comes out of that, because
you can't win.
You're automatically disbelieved. And even if you prove that your situation actually happened as you said it happened, everyone will continue to call you a feminist because you spoke out in the first place. And so this is why I said before, I don't want men to ever feel how I currently feel. And this is why, you know, I did my men's rights stuff and I still really care about that. But it's also why now I'm so aggressively like, listen, there are some significant bloody issues on the right wing that we have to fix, because if we don't, you're going to alienate the living crap out of women. You will never have the support of normal everyday women because they're feeling alienated. The men then feel alienated because they're like, why are you behaving like this? And it just makes things so much worse. So...
yeah. And she's somebody who sticks up for men, but she's sort of come to realise as well that, like, I mean, it's not always man innocent victim and woman the villain. Okay, now I know that there'll be plenty of people that would say, but there's a lot of people out there that always think it's the man that's the villain and the woman that's the victim. Okay, and that's true. but neither of them are truthful. Okay, it's not true to blame everything on men, and it's not true to blame everything on women. And as another YouTuber said, a YouTuber who calls herself Kidiology, I think, she said, the right doesn't care about women, just like the left doesn't care about men. And I think she's right there. And I'll say, like, some people on the right and some people on the left. I'm not going to say everybody. But it is true that, like, sometimes if you talk about male issues, if you talk about male loneliness or things that, you know, affect men more often than women, you get some people on the left who are like, boo-hoo, poor men. And they're, like, all sarcastic like that. And they, like, refuse to believe that men can be vulnerable and that men can have problems. But it's also true that on the right, that they're the same, like, but with women, okay? Like, if you ever talk about how women can have problems, it's like, oh, wow, why are women playing the victim? If you've been abused, you chose him. And, you know, which they wouldn't say that to a man if he'd been in an abusive relationship with a woman, okay? So you get this sort of on both sides, okay? And I think this is because, say, like, on the left, they seem to think that men, particularly the white man, is sort of more privileged and they have life easier than the woman. But then on the right, they kind of think that women are all privileged and spoiled and women have stuff easier than men, okay? And the trouble with this kind of attitude is it causes a lack of empathy. Like, if people think that men have everything easy, they don't empathise with men because they just don't believe they can have, like, serious problems. But also, if people think that women have everything easy, people don't empathise with women, okay? And it leads to dehumanising people, okay? When people refuse to sort of, like, even think about, like, the suffering of another person, it's like they're dehumanising them, okay?
Right.
Yeah, well, I mean, but I'm just trying to get through the logic of, I married a federal agent, something, the Manosphere.
Right, exactly.
Wouldn't the federal agent be more an example of federal agents?
Had ever written a negative article about me, both right-wing and left-wing. And I was told that this was a contingency list of people he would contact to hurt my reputation if I disobeyed in the marriage.
That is asshole behavior. That's abusive.
Yes?
What? So he had a list of people who had ever written anything bad about her, right? And interestingly enough, she's now going to the centrist. Oh, I'm being dissed by the left and the right. Anything bad about her. Okay, but they're already writing bad things about you. What does it matter? What is he going to say? She puts the toilet paper in the wrong way. Like, what the hell is he going to reveal about you that they're not already taking pot shots at?
Well, I think she's crafting, or she's done this in her mind. I'm not trying to imply anything nefarious or sinister, but I watched most of this video, and most of it is a Lauren Southern pity party. Like,
okay,
woe is me. Everyone's mean to me. This is why I'm taking the reality pill. I'm reality pilled, guys. Did you guys realize that there's nuance in the world and sometimes things aren't black and white? Did you know that? Did you know that, like, the internet can, if you, like, follow every piece of advice you take from strangers on the internet, that sometimes it doesn't work out in your favor? We got to blame somebody for this, but it's not me. I'm not blaming me, you know.
I'm just like, I'm curious what his side, what he would say to all of this.
I would like to know that too. I would like to know that too.
He's framing this because he was saying if you don't obey in the marriage, well, okay.
Okay, the Manosphere, the Red Pill community, and, like, the right-wing Christian conservatives, right, they're all incredibly biased in the sense that they kind of blame women for everything and almost let men off the hook, and have a, like, men can do nothing wrong and, like, everything's a woman's fault, and hold women up to a higher standards than what they hold men up to. Like, they expect women to get married as young as possible, but, like, if men say they want to sleep around until they're middle-aged, these communities don't shame men like they do women. In fact, guys who sleep around, they're sort of seen as alpha males in the red pill community, and even in the Christian conservative community, they're put on podcasts to like shame women for not being married and tell women they're doing everything wrong, okay? And like, all problems in marriages are blamed on women in these communities, divorces are all blamed on women, and men can do no wrong. And like, these two are sort of proving that point here, because you're blaming Lauren for apparently messing up her marriage, yet if it was a man who claimed that he'd been a victim of abuse from a toxic woman, you wouldn't be putting the blame on him, okay? You'd be blaming the woman. But, of course, when it's a woman who says she's been abused by a man, they're always, in these communities, they're always like, oh, well, it's your fault for picking him, or we shouldn't just believe the woman, we should hear the man's side of of things. But you wouldn't say that if it was a man, okay? So they're proving her point here. And, you know, as for saying the reality pill, I mean, people, particularly say like red pillars, they come out with this stuff about how they've unplugged themselves from the matrix and they're the ones that know the truth now, okay? But they're not. They've just plugged themselves into a different matrix, all right? Because I think everybody is brainwashed to a degree. We're all brainwashed in some ways, okay? Nobody is particularly an arbiter of truth, and we all change our opinions as well. Something that we think is the truth, give it like some time later, and then we've changed our mind. And that's the same with Lauren Southern here. Like, she sort of said she fell a bit for this like men good, woman bad brainwashing from the Manosphere and conservatives and red pill and all that. She sort of fell for that, so like thought like she had to try harder in the marriage. And it's like took her a while to realise, well, actually, no, it's not actually true that all men are innocent angels and all problems are on the woman. And it's also like not true that every man wants a conservative wife, a stay-at-home mum, or a woman to be submissive either. You know, like that lifestyle might work for some people, but not for everybody. And in the Manosphere, like, I mean, it depends in which area of the Manosphere. Obviously, like, not all of them are saying the same thing, but a lot of them, they sell the idea that what all men want is, like, a submissive, stay-at-home woman. Men don't want women who have careers. They want the man to be the head of the house and the man to be the provider and the woman to be at home with the kids. They sell the idea that that is what every man wants, but it's not what every man wants. It's what some men want, and some women want that lifestyle, and some don't, okay? People are all different. So I can understand, like, how she sort of fell for this, like, oh, well, if I'm, you know, at home and I'm submissive, if I do everything around the house, if I'm the perfect housewife, that's what men want. I can understand how she fell for that. But I do also get that, like, I mean, Lauren Southern herself is one that has also been like pushing this sort of like same propaganda that this is what all men want, and like the problems in society are women's fault. I mean, she had been part of that community, and she does sort of go on to say later on in the Triggernometry interview, she does go on to say that, like, well, you know, that she was wrong. She does acknowledge that, but I'm just saying I can understand where she's coming from about how, like, you know, they sell the idea in the Manosphere, red pill, and all that. They sell the idea that they're the ones that know the truth and everybody else is in this matrix and all that, when actually it's not the truth. You know, people blaming everything on men, that's wrong. We should call out people who do that, okay? Acknowledge that, you know, problems in our society, they're not all men's fault, and women aren't all angels, right? But it's not right, it's not the truth to sell this idea that everything's women's fault and men can do no wrong either, okay? Like, neither of those are truthful.
So well, this was a right-wing Fed? That's different. Why are they against the right-wing?
No,
do they know
no.
Do they know they have a sleeper agent among them?
No, he wasn't a right-wing Fed. He was just a Fed, which means he was likely working for the state, which means he was a statist, which means he's a leftist, really. I mean, that's what leftists are. They're statists, Allison.
Yeah,
but he didn't have a political affiliation. He was just the guy that she wanted to marry. And it turned out, according to her, that he was, controlling or something and abusive.
Yeah, but feds have been, like, basically they've put the right on a terrorist watch list. And now she's saying that
she was on a watch list.
Yeah, she was on a watch list. There's this federal agent who she was married to who is right-wing, I guess. Well, why don't you just tell the feds that? He'll probably get fired and put on a watch list. Like, this is bizarre. Like, it just it's sort of convoluted and strange.
I want to be fair. Lauren Southern never said what his politics were. She never talked about that.
Yeah, but she's essentially insinuating that the reason why he kept this list of people who... God, why would you not be like, yeah, no, I'm not having children with someone... anyway, but... He kept this list of outlets... of people that ever said anything bad about her, and apparently was going to give them ambiguous information that would ruin her reputation with people who already hated her, which doesn't make sense on the surface. And also, what the hell would he have on you? Like, what were you doing in your marriage? Like, they already hate you. They already hate your politics. What is he going to reveal about you unless it's personal indiscretions?
Okay, you do know that people can lie, right? Okay, it is possible for people to lie about you, okay? It's called a smear campaign, something which is kind of commonly done by narcissists and psychopaths if they get pissed off by somebody. Because Lauren Southern did say this in the Triggernometry interview.
It was actually my husband that started messaging influencers, both left-wing and right-wing, saying, Lauren's divorced. She's this terrible person, before I'd even spoken about it publicly. So my hand was kind of forced by this false narrative being spread and being emailed to people behind the scenes at the time for the purpose of destroying me so that I would come back to the relationship. So I don't know if any of that makes sense. Yeah, well, that was what was so interesting to me, is basically he left me, and I think when he realized a year later that I was actually moving on, he was very upset by that and started calling me hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. And when I was like, listen, I'm done, we can go to mediation, have shared, co-parenting, all this stuff, as long as we're going through a proper mediator to do it. I think his hope was he could kind of destroy my reputation within mainstream circles. So he started saying, she cheated on me, she alienated our child from me. Of course, none of this actually occurred. But a lot of the left wing, I think, more mainstream people didn't bite. In fact, one of the creators that received these emails was Destiny. I think you interviewed him recently, and instead of his email that he got was, you should confront Lauren during one of your live stream debates and drop on her that she's actually a divorced single mother who failed in her marriage and who stole her child and was cheating on her husband. And he reached out to me and was like, this is really like unhinged behavior. Are you okay? Like, how can can you take this to court? Is there anything you can do about this? And that's how I kind of started to find out about the emails. And when he wouldn't confront me on stream, he kind of gave up on the more mainstream left people and started emailing a ton of right-wing influencers and red pill influencers. And, Lauren stole her child, Lauren cheated on her husband, Lauren did this, all from kind of fake accounts. I'm a friend of a friend of his, sometimes from himself. And during this time where I was trying to rebuild my life, figure out how I'm going to talk about the fact that my husband left me, I had all of these people that previously in some cases were friends of me publishing Lauren's cheated on her husband, Lauren's, alienated her son. So I have people like Pearl Davis tweeting all day about how I've stolen my child and all this kind of stuff. All made up, all invented. And for the sole purpose, you're probably on the right side of but for the sole purpose of psychologically tormenting me while I'm the sole carer of my child. And it's incredible. I think that was like a big wake-up call for me, seeing these people who, when like left-wingers had a little more critical thinking to say, wow, this is like really weird, unhinged behavior, whereas these red pill people who purport to understand relationship dynamics, who purport to understand like how males and females act, just man must be correct, woman must be wrong. Do I need any evidence? No. And a lot of people think I just said all this with no evidence. I have evidence, I have court documents, I have protective orders that judges have gone over and said, this is insane. Like, you need a protective order against this person. So
it doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. And then what I'm getting at is she's saying this Fed demanded a right-wing relationship in which she was the surrendered wife, which I don't know, like that's coded right-wing now. Well, obviously then his politics are right-wing. Well, go out him with his employer. Like, isn't she just damaging the hell out of his career at the feds now? Like,
okay, again, I don't understand why Alison keeps going on about Lauren's ex-husband being a Fed, okay? I do kind of agree with people, like some people have said, well, it's not the lifestyle choice that's the problem, it's the guy that Lauren married, okay? I do think, though, listening to Lauren Southern, I think what she's sort of saying is, well, my interpretation anyway, is that she's talking about, like I said before, about how a lot of the guys in the Manosphere make out that, like, a trad wife is what all men want, and it's not what all men want, okay? Or she says that, like, some people, they put on this, like act in front of everybody else that their marriage is perfect, but behind, like, closed doors, it isn't. And, I would imagine that is true in some cases, like, I would hope that most people who say that their happy in their marriage are in fact happy, but there's going to be some people who are not, and that they hide it from everybody else. Okay, I also think that there are some of the tradcons that come across a little bit like disingenuous. Like you get some tradcon women who talk about how the woman's supposed to be submissive in the marriage, but they don't come across the slightest bit submissive themselves. They come across like quite bossy and sort of like overpowering themselves. Okay, which I mean, I don't know how they act, like with their husbands. Okay, but I just kind of find it a little bit funny, when it's women like that talk about how it's feminine to be submissive, and they don't come across like the slightest bit like that. Also, you get like, say like women like Candice Owens. She says she promotes the idea of women being stay-at-home mums, and says that like society is lying to women by convincing them to put their career before their home life and all that. Yet she is a career woman despite having children, and like I believe one of her children is like still a young baby, and she's a career woman. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but it's just the fact that they promote the idea that women should all be like these stay-at-home mums, that's the best sort of outcome, yet they're not living the life that they're promoting. Okay, so I do think it is true that some of the people promoting this are being a bit disingenuous.
The problem is that these sort of like trad wives, the traditional women, are actually doing a lot more work, and in many cases a lot more work than the girl bosses were. They're just doing it in a different way. And in many cases they have to still be a girl boss because they have to earn money. Some don't have to earn money outside the home, but I mean that is one of the ironies of the content creator trad wives, is that they're making a lot of money being girl bosses essentially, but they're being girl bosses in a way that is anti-girl boss. Yet they are girl bosses because they're running their own business, teaching women to not be girl bosses. I've always found the irony in the fact that these trad wives are sort of portraying this lifestyle of being traditional and not having a career of focusing on family and children, but yet they're making a career out of it and making a lot of money. So they are girl bosses who are pretending to reject girl boss culture, and to me there's a lot of hypocrisy in that. Again, no judgment. You want to be a girl boss, you want to be a trad wife, you want to be something in between, you do you. But there is a hypocrisy in the concept of making a pile of money as a girl boss in a career that is anti-girl boss. It's like anti-women working outside the home. So you're working in the home and you're making a lot of money and you're selling women on this idea, which is unattainable. I would argue though that like all of this content here, and again, if you want to consume the content, you want it to be entertaining, and that's fine. However, you have to be really mindful that the lifestyle that people are selling you online is probably not all reality. There's other aspects to things. This is one of the things that really gets to me, is that a lot of the people sort of in the trad wife, trad con, manosphere, whatever lifestyle love to say that feminism has manipulated women into believing that their careers are more important than family, and that feminism is so manipulative and manipulated women so much into convincing them to have a certain life as opposed to a different life, or to choose a certain path. But then they'll turn around and they will manipulate women into choosing the path that they want them to take, and manipulating women into kind of putting the concept of being a trad wife, which I'm not knocking, but I'm just saying that there's a danger in painting to women that is like a fantasy life, and that it's the answer to all your problems, that you're selling people a fantasy, and then when women get into that they realize that it's not what they thought it was going to be, and there's a big danger in that. In the same way that I would argue that, and I don't know if I necessarily agree that feminists are doing this, but if you are manipulating women into thinking that rejecting personal relationships or rejecting love or rejecting anything just to have a career is the path that will make you happy, and not giving women the full story of like, hey, you know what, you might end up feeling lonely, you might end up feeling like you wish you hadn't put everything in your life aside for a career, you might not feeling that way. Like, it's important to give people the full story, and I think whatever path you decide to choose is the path you decide to choose, whether you decide to be a career woman or whether you decide to be a trad wife or you want to be something in between. Like, it's your choice. But I don't like the people who are selling people on this particular path is perfect and will solve all your problems and will be this ultimate fantasy, and like you'll never have any bad days, because then when that woman does choose that path, her bad days are going to hit so much harder because she didn't see them coming. And there's pluses and minuses to every life path. Every single life path that you're going to pick, there's pluses and minuses to them. And I think we need people to be aware of what those pluses and minuses are, so they can make a decision to be like, hey, you know what, if I choose this path or I choose this life, hey, these are the downsides, but do I think the downsides of this life are worth it? Like, do I think that the ups and downs are going to be worth it, or am I only looking for the upsides to this, and I just don't think that this life is worth the downsides? That's the way you help a person pick the right path for them. I don't like the implication that feminism manipulated women into this life path by selling them this fantasy, but then they turn around and sell women a different fantasy, and like nobody is telling women the reality of the choices that they make. Probably dedicating your whole life solely to your career is probably going to make you lonely in the long run. Is dedicating your entire life to your husband and your family and never feeling like you have anything for yourself also going to feel ultimately empty at the end of the day? Yeah, probably. Like,
this is like, the trad life of the woman being the homemaker and the man being the provider. It suits some people, but not everybody. Some men want a stay-at-home wife, some men do not. Okay, some women want to be a stay-at-home wife, some do not. Some people will like talk about how their traditional life is the best and they're so happy, and some of them will be telling the truth, but some of them are not going to be telling the truth. Okay, so I think this is the sort of the impression I got is this is what Lauren Southern is getting at. Okay, it's like they do sort of sell the idea that the traditional lifestyle is like, it's perfect, it's a fairy tale, it's the yin and yang, man and woman complementing each other kind of thing, and it didn't work out for her. It wasn't like that for her, but I'm not, I would hope that most people who are living that life are happy, But obviously there are going to be some people who are not quite telling the truth.
They're going to find out, oh, look, this guy, he believes in right-wing Sibylliths. You know, he wants a surrendered wife. Isn't that terrorism now? Like, and again, where does he get to say his side? I mean, I can't believe I'm standing up for a Fed, but really, doesn't he get to talk about what happened? Or does he completely silenced while she goes out and says all of this about their relationship and puts it on trial in public with him not being able to comment back? Yeah, sure, it's abusive if it happened. Does he get the opportunity to rejoin it? Is he going to get a spot on Triggernometry to say his side?
He can upload videos on YouTube, giving his side of the story if he wants to. When men come to the Manosphere and they complain about their ex-wives, ex-girlfriends, or the women that have hurt them in their life, do you ever ask for for their wives or girlfriends' point of view? Do you ever, or do you just hashtag believe all men?
Because otherwise, this is just a star court of this guy. This is just basically holding court with one side, which is in of itself very, very unethical.
Yes, but also, this isn't even, it's not this guy that's on trial. This is the reason for this video, is that it's the entire Red Pill Manosphere that's on trial, because they're the ones that turned on Lauren Southern when this all happened. And that's the thing, like, well, we haven't even gotten past the intro, but I just want to point out that funny? The Fed, the whole thing with this X is really just the precedent that is being set so that she can make claims about the people that she used to, I guess, fuck with, like, you know, roll with, to make them look bad. And she's done this. She's made videos about this, and I've already expressed my frustration because I don't think it's fair. I think she's being, like, she's claiming that people are being really black and white with their thinking, while she's being black and white with her thinking about, like, the reality of it. And
okay, I would also say that a lot of the Manosphere is very black and white with their thinking, in the sense that they have a very biased men are good and women are bad attitude. Now, these guys are sort of making the argument that, like, oh, but she shouldn't judge everybody like that in the Manosphere, because then she's judging us and she's criticizing all of us. But it's like, again, like, don't you do that with feminists? I mean, the word feminist is seen as an extremely dirty word, okay? In the Manosphere, anybody who calls herself a feminist is automatically labelled a bad person, a man-hater. But not only that, anybody that disagrees with people in the Manosphere get called a feminist, whether they are or not. And even within, like, the Manosphere and Red Pill community, like, when they fall out with each other, like, some people, so say, like, some red pillars will then go and call, like, you know, other people in the Manosphere feminists for not agreeing with them. Or people will call, like, the tradcons trad feminists if they don't agree with them. Okay, so the word feminist gets thrown around, like, as an insult. Okay, so they're sort of judging all feminists, you know, as bad people, which I think is unfair. I think that's putting, that's judging people just on a label, without listening to what they have to say. But the point is like, they sort of cast anybody who calls herself feminist as bad, and anybody who they don't like, some of them call anybody who they don't like a feminist, okay? But the black and white thinking, yes, it's on both sides, okay? And the very biased, if you're talking about the Manosphere, yes, they do have an extremely biased, men are good and women are bad, okay? And, like, you can see this with stuff like recently I was listening to Paul Elam, talking to Pearl Davis about Steve Crowder, right? And they both defend Steve Crowder. And I mean, I think, like, Paul Elam, in the same video, was talking about how easy it is to spot the red flags that a woman is toxic, okay? He said to him, he believes it's really easy to spot red flags that a woman is toxic, okay? But then when he sees video footage of Steve Crowder being horrible to his wife, his translation of that is that, well, the woman must have done something wrong. His wife must have done something wrong because, you know, even though it's the man that was being an asshole, the way these guys think is like men good, woman bad. So it's like, what did she do to, you know, piss him off? Or if she's divorcing him, she must be in the wrong. And Paul Elam's not the only one. There's lots of guys in the Manosphere that think like that. I mean, say like Rollo Tomaschi. He's all like, oh, Meghan Markle's a narcissist. Prince Harry has to get out of the marriage before she drives him to suicide, right? But again, he is one who, when he watches that video footage of Steve Crowder being a complete and utter asshole to his wife, he's like, well, she must have done something to piss him off, or she must have been, you know, being a pain in the marriage because a man apparently doesn't react like that. Unless a woman is treating him badly, okay? So again, it's like what you can spot toxic women, but when it's men that you see behaving badly, you do not believe a man can be toxic. You think it must be the woman that's done something wrong. And even, you know, when Lauren Southern did a, like, interview, or, you know, that when there was that article about her when she was, you know, opening up about her toxic marriage, some of the people that in the Manosphere that criticised, who looked at that and then went through it and criticised her, they were basically saying, well, women are the illogical, irrational ones, while men are always logical and rational, so it must have been her at fault.
There were warning signs from early on. If I ever disagreed with him in any capacity, he'd just disappear for days at a time. I remember there were nights where he'd call me worthless and pathetic and get in the car and leave. Now, I want to, guys, put in the chat, what does this mean? What does this actually mean? If, like, what is she leaving out of the story? Another thing I want to bring forward. Now, we don't have proof of any of this. These are just stories, right? But let's just say she's telling the truth. Why would he disappear for days at a time? Why would he call her worthless and pathetic? Now, she did something insane and he had to get away. That is exactly my thought. I thought, well, was there some infidelity? That would make sense. If he caught her cheating, I don't know if there was or there wasn't, but I'm just begging the question. Let's say he caught her cheating. Well, can you really blame him for leaving for a couple days and calling her worthless and pathetic? What if it was a continual problem? I mean, social media influencers are the most likely ones to cheat. She probably whooped his ass like, yeah. All right, but she didn't see them. Thanks to the simplified anti-feminist ideology she'd absorbed and promoted. I had this delusional view of relationships and only women could be the ones that make or break them, and that men could do no wrong. So she didn't spot the red flags, even as they grew more extreme. He'd lock me. All right, now let's go to the next one. He'd lock me out of the house. I remember having to knock on the neighbor's door on a rainy night because he'd get upset and drive off. Wait, hold on. He'd lock me out of the house. I remember having to knock on my neighbor's door on a rainy night because he'd get upset and drive off without unlocking the house. It was very strange to go from being this public figure on stage with people clapping to the girl crying, knocking on someone's door with no home to get into, being abandoned with a baby. Now again, what would draw a man to do this? And these are the questions we have to start asking. He definitely found evidence of something. Why didn't she have a key to her own house? And the more you read the story, the more it sounds like she was cheating or talking to a lot of men. I don't know. You know, because guys are pretty even keel. Women are the emotional ones. So my question is that you made a guy get so emotional that he left and locked you out of the house.
If I ever disagreed with him in any capacity, he'd just disappear for days at a time. Yeah, I'd imagine it's probably just that simple. If we had a little disagreement, I couldn't imagine, Lauren Southern, who you can go check out all of her interactions online. She just always seemed like the most peachy keen individual who would never, ever, ever become hysterical or overly emotional in a confrontation. No. She was just simply the doting housewife going, oh, if you ever disagreed with me, he would just do the masculine thing, knowing that there would only be one responsible conclusion to this altercation, and it would be for him to remove himself from the situation. But you're going to call that weak. I'm also going to call that the smart thing to do, given the fact that 911 is a simple phone call away, and oh yes, mandatory arrest laws, and the fact that the moment that police officers see a crying woman, their IQ drops precipitously. This is as absurd as revisionist history propagated by an out-and-out right-leaning feminist. Whenever I would do something, he would say, I'm going to divorce you, effeminate. Yeah, whenever I wouldn't do something, he would say, I'm going to divorce you. No, it's probably because you were dead weight. It's probably because you weren't fulfilling your half of the conversation, of the relationship. Rather, you thought that I could just go ahead and I could have this trad life experience, I could just be the stay-at-home mom, and I wouldn't have to do anything to hold up my end of the bargain because I have the power of the government on my side. And I'm sure that was the first thing that would happen whenever I wouldn't do something. It's not clearly her being hysterical or her breaking out the histrionics. No, it couldn't possibly be the case, but it's effeminate. All you do is sit around and take care of the baby and do chores. Again, there you have the all or nothing description. All you do is sit around, take care of the baby and do chores. Why me? You're so much kinder, sweet, and more pursuant of me when I was the boss babe traveling the world working. Is that you reframing the relationship with certain hindsight in place? Is that you romanticizing the courtship period? I'm just wondering, careerist. Yeah, see, that's a problem right there. You're demanding I contribute more financially, which given the fact that you want to frame all of this stuff around, I was being controlled in my relationship. They think that you want to go ahead and immediately jump to the money situation. No, man, I don't want to lump all of this stuff on you as opposed to lumping all of this stuff on him like you're trying to do, I'm going to say, like is always the case, there's three sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth. But also understanding Lauren Southern's history, I've got to side with Pearl. Once again, single mothers have a tendency to care about their children. Why wouldn't it be a good idea to do an article trashing your ex when the child's involved? Her son will one day grow up and read it. Let's talk about the horrors of her life. If I ever disagreed with him in any capacity, he just disappeared for days at a time. I remember, so this was during 2020 in Australia when you weren't allowed to go not but a couple of blocks away from your house. Sure thing. I remember there were nights where he'd call me worthless and pathetic and then get into this car and leave. Well, were you worthless? Were you pathetic? What else was leading up to those conversations? Because I think they're leaving some stuff out. But she didn't see them. Thanks to the simplified anti-feminist ideologies she's absorbed and promoted. See, it's never her fault. It's everybody else's fault. I had this delusional view of relationships that only women could be the ones to make or break them and that men can do no wrong. So now I've just completely and totally flipped this on its head because now I can sell the whole reformed conservative turned feminist because I've seen the seedy underbelly of the right wing, the same talking points that she's been peddling over the past couple of years. Oh, okay, cool. But now because she has a personal sob story that you can't refute because single mothers run the world, now it becomes a little bit more palatable as opposed to, when she was trying to throw all conservative media under the bus and everybody else had receipts going, well, actually she wasn't doing her job. It's very interesting. He'd lock me out of the house, I'm sure. I remember having to knock on the neighbor's door on rainy nights. Oh my, can you make this any more dramatic? Because he'd get upset and drive off without unlocking the house. Oh, okay, right. It's very strange to go from being this public figure on stage with people clapping to the girl crying, knocking on someone's door with no home to get into, being abandoned with a baby. Oh my god. He used to get all this attention and now I'm gonna make up stories in order to get the same amount of attention. Holy shit, bro. If I wouldn't do something, he would say, I'm going to divorce you, so I felt like I have no other option. She assented. Yeah, but if you're gonna get divorced from somebody who's locking you out of the house, is it really that bad? Who's going to be a liability preventing him from moving up in the government? He really wanted to get back into his old work, and when Southern was a hardcore liability, the pressure was on. He was like, Lauren, you gotta hire lawyers, you gotta disavow everything, and you've gotta never talk publicly again. Yeah, I don't know about that, because your past can always be brought back, and if you do disavow everything, so, kind of a bit skeptical. So in 2019, she announced that she was leaving media and activism altogether. Yeah, nobody cared. They were like, deuces, you're already irrelevant right now. I believe I had a certain role in my relationship, and as being more submissive one for my support, my husband's dreams. Yeah, and again, just go back to 2019. She was hitting a wall. Now she's just bracing for the one that she's about to hit in a couple years' time. But this is the kicker right here. Then
thousands of miles from friends and family, she reports becoming the closest thing to a modern day Western slave. Oh my god. How can you take anything that she says seriously moving forward with no income of her own? It was your husband just sitting on a pile of cash? Like, is that what we're doing here? She has no income of her own. She had to do everything. The lawns, the house, the cooking, the baby care, his university homework. I didn't know anymore. I didn't have any support. There was no help changing diapers. There was no help waking up in the night with the baby. I still have to get up. I still have to make breakfast before work. I'd be shaking and nervous for fear I'm going to get yelled at. Oh my God. Then he'd berate her for spending all her time on tasks other than earning money. I was told daily that I was worthless, pathetic, deadweight. All you do is sit around, take care of the baby, and do chores. When COVID shut down, the real-world public life or situation became hell on earth. It was, she said, the only time in my life where I idealized the dying. Oh my God. Be more dramatic, seriously.
You know that there are times when I wonder if the majority of the red pill community are actually psychopaths. Seriously. Okay, this is your reaction. Somebody says they were in an abusive relationship where they got so depressed that they were idealized dying, and that's your reaction. These people are disgusting. Okay, and first of all, they were talking about, before black and white thinking. This is exactly what I'm talking about, right? Because people in this community, like these guys, they seem to think that if people don't agree with them, that it's always the woman that's the bad one. And men are always the good, logical, and sensible ones that can do no wrong. They then accuse you of being the other way and saying, oh, it's always the woman who's in the right, and it's always the woman who's the bad one, and, oh, now Lauren Southern must be like a feminist who thinks single mothers are the absolute best thing in the world, and it's always the man's fault. It's like, they're the ones with the black and white thinking, where they kind of think if you don't agree with them that men are all good and everything's women's fault, they will then accuse you of thinking that women are all good and everything is the man's fault. Okay, they think that you can only have the two opposite views. They don't think that not everybody judges people on gender. Okay, not everybody thinks you have to just take a side based on the gender, Men can be abusive and women can be abusive, okay. And again, stuff like saying, oh, well, if he was really that bad, surely Lauren should be pleased to, be divorcing him. It's like, do you really not understand? Do you really not get why it would be traumatic if somebody, they fell in love with somebody, married them, had their child, and was planning to spend, the rest of their life with them. Like Lauren Southern said, when she married this guy, she felt like she'd won the lottery. She was that happy, right? To go from being that happy to then,
You know, I mean, a divorce is going to be an end of a relationship and an end of that dream. That's going to be upsetting and traumatic for anybody. But specifically, if she's been through, like, an abusive relationship.
This is what I'm talking about, okay? I mean, first of all, the assumption that the woman's always in the wrong because women are illogical and irrational is just pure misogyny, but also the claim that a man would never react with any, like, angry emotions because men are always rational. It's like, well, does that mean that any man that's in prison for a violent offence has been wrongly convicted? Does that mean the data that says about how women die every week at the hands of an abusive partner, that's wrong? Because, you know, men never, ever, no man has ever lost his temper or been in the wrong. This is what I'm talking about. They sell the idea that men are always good and women are always bad.
And because you make the claim, Lauren Southern, that this is all about, like, oh, guys are just chasing clout and money, because that's like her last video, oh, you can make a lot of money if you, like, shit on women or whatever, while also engaging in your own clout chasing with these people. Like, this is the thing. Like, maybe I'll save this for later. So we'll play some more.
Behavior 101. This idea that you have in the red pill community that, you know, no matter what the man does, the woman is supposed to just, that's not how it's supposed to be. Lauren Southern, welcome to...
Okay, so for the record, nobody ever says that. This is another... See, these guys piss me off for different reasons. So he says, like, this idea in the red pill that, like, women are just supposed to be the servants to men. That's just not the way it is. It's like, nobody says that. Nobody says that. Like, even... no, I'm sorry. It just doesn't happen. I don't give a fuck. Like, this is, like, really...
You're just but what they said on the Triggernometry interview, which they blanked out because I suppose it was a word that YouTube didn't like, is that men in the Manosphere say that women should submit to men. Okay, and that is true. Okay, I mean, all right, you know, it depends what area of the Manosphere you look at, but, you know, a lot of the red pill community, a lot of the Christian conservatives, a lot of them say that women should submit to the man, okay? Now, I understand that to some people, the idea of submission doesn't mean, like, oppressing the woman. Some people think, you know, the natural gender roles are that the man should be the head of the house and the woman should be more submissive, but they think it's just, you know, this is just the natural gender roles and that they complement each other and one isn't better than the other, and both the man and the woman will be happier this way. And there are some women in the, say, like, you know, conservative Sophia that say, you know, as well, that, you know, they like the man to be the leader and they're more submissive. Okay, which, if that works for individual relationships, fair enough, okay. But the idea that would suit most people, I disagree with. Or the idea that women are, by design, meant to be submissive, I disagree with. I think if women were designed to be submissive to men, women would be submissive to men, okay? You wouldn't need to tell women, okay? You know, to say, like, oh, the reason why women don't submit to men is because of feminist brainwashing is a little bit like saying cats are supposed to bark like dogs, but the only reason why they don't is because they've been brainwashed. It's like, well, no, you know, if they were meant to bark, they would bark. Okay, if women were meant to be submissive, they would be submissive, but they are clearly not, okay? But I do understand that people who do believe, you know, in the what is considered the old-fashioned gender roles of the man being the head of the house and the woman being, like, more submissive, like, not everybody who believes that is, like, a male supremacist who, you know, thinks that the woman, you know, her opinions don't count. I do get that, like, some people believe in these, like, old-fashioned gender roles, but believe that they are both equally important, okay? However, I have listened to enough of the extremist of the red pill community and the manosphere to know that when they talk about a woman submitting to a man, they literally mean her being a doormat. I mean, a literal doormat. And in relationships, you're supposed to, like, tell her what to do. You're not, the extremist, and this is men and women, kind of think, the woman's not meant to even have an opinion. Her, like, thoughts and feelings don't matter. Okay, like, yeah. And these guys know that there are guys in their community that are like that, okay?
Commenting the shit out of these people.
If they do, okay, this is something that I've realized, and you might disagree with me, Brian. If they do, if there is a part of the red pill manosphere who says this crap, well, they got their corresponding female counterpart among feminists. And I would say all feminists, because, or at least all feminists who believe that men oppress women. Because what is that except asserting moral dominance over an entire class of people, right? So what is that? Is that demanding that they constantly serve you to do, what's that word? They serve you in order to redeem themselves for their sin. Okay, so those two, if you're seeing the rise of men who say exactly the mirror opposite of what feminism has said to men.
Yes, but what came first, the chicken or the egg? And what I mean is like, I've heard this a lot of times now, that the red pill manosphere is a response to feminism, okay? That women attacked men first, and now red pill is a response to that, okay? But I'm kind of thinking, which came first, right? Guys in the red pill community do think that women are inferior, do think that women are less intelligent, capable of logic. Well, it's not just the extremists, actually, now that think that women shouldn't have the right to vote. There's a lot now in red pill and manosphere who believe that. People in your communities all the time talk about women as if they're these silly, irrational, illogical creatures. And a lot of the time it's like, well, anybody who disagrees with our opinions are illogical, and if they're a woman, we'll just put it down to their silly woman brain. Okay, but the thing is, there have always been guys like that. Not just men and women, okay? There have always been people like that, okay? Now, I would say that feminism was a response to that, okay? It is true that women have been, in the past, not given the same opportunities as men, okay? And it's like, nowadays, young women are more educated than young men, young women are earning more than young men, and I'm not saying this to try to make it a competition, but what I'm saying is, like, obviously, in the past, women were held back, okay? So I would have said that feminism was kind of a response to the kind of attitudes of thinking that, people believing that women are inferior, or just not believing that women can be as good as men at stuff, okay? And just believing that women's place is only in the home. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a stay-at-home mother. I'd say, like, well, is the red pill really, like, is it a response to feminism, or is it a case that there've always been people that have these attitudes and feminism was a response to them? Okay, because I think it's a bit of both, alright? I think there's always been people with the same attitudes as the people in the manosphere and red pill community. But now, because we have, like, the internet, and everybody can sort of, join specific groups and listen to specific brainwashing, and a lot of these communities are convincing men that there's a matriarchy and that women are out to get them and stuff like that. And they'll say, oh, this is a response to feminism. I kind of think, well, yeah, maybe it is a bit of a response to feminism, but I also think feminism was a response to people having attitudes like that about women, okay? I think that's a two-way thing.
You want to look at the nasty shit being said. Okay, fine. You got the red pill bros saying it about women. You got feminists saying it about men, right? It's interesting to see that suddenly feminists are getting some of their own shit thrown back at them, and everybody's going nuts over the men who are doing it. Whereas I'm like, you know what? How long Were men supposed to just swallow this crap?
You say that, but a lot of these guys are proving the radical feminists right, not wrong. Okay, how many of these guys that you defend, Alison, don't really fully respect you because you're a woman? Who, if like Lauren had claimed that you'd been in an abusive relationship, would just fob you off with like, "Oh, you must have done something to annoy the guy." Men are logical and rational. They wouldn't react angrily. It's you, the illogical woman, that must have done something, okay? How many of them think that, like, really it'd be better if you had your rights taken away, or you shouldn't be able to vote? How many of them would actually rather see you and pretty much all women fail at any, like, career because they don't want you to do better than men? Okay. You know, there are some MRAs that they'll say stuff like, they'll say that it's misandric to say that men would ever want to oppress women.
The feminist keeps on saying men are toxic and have always been oppressors of women.
Okay, they say this, that it's misandric to say men would want to oppress women, but then, in the next breath, we'll go on about how if a woman's a good anti-feminist woman, they'll defend radicals in the red pill community that would like to oppress you.
The video is actually, supposed to be about, what MGTOW is really about. And beyond the lip service, I don't really get the sense that she really respects MRAs, MGTOW, or anybody that actually speaks about men's issues.
So basically, the MRA's message to women is, ladies, we need to fight against this sexist, misandric, hateful speech from the radical feminists that men would like to oppress women. But also, ladies, we need to support these thousands, millions of guys that wish that they could take your rights away, stop you voting, and oppress you. And ladies, we need to fight against this radical feminist propaganda that men hate women and don't respect women. But also, ladies, we need to defend the groups of men who think exactly like how the radical feminists say men think about you.
And nobody listened. You all did everything in your power to ignore and censor us. And not just the main big YouTubers like this, YouTube commentators. You wouldn't even touch us. You wouldn't even give us a platform. And all we're saying is, hey, that's mean. Stop it. And now we see the rise of the red pill bros giving a bit of what they've got back. What are we supposed to feel? We're supposed to now go on your side and say, hey, you're being mean. Really?
A bit of what they got back. So just to be clear then, after years of women being held back and not being able to discover their full potential, now that women are actually realising how smart they can be and what they can achieve in the world, the red pillars throwing their toys out of the cot and throwing a basic childish temper tantrum because they are terrified of realising what women can do. This is them giving a little bit back, is it? Okay, not to mention the fact that, stuff like, right, I do agree that there has been an unfair demonising of men, okay? The most radical feminists saying that all men are potential rapists, yeah, that's a disgusting thing to say. Or, toxic masculinity, like if you're going to say, you either don't use the term toxic masculinity, or if they're going to say toxic masculinity, I think people have to admit that there's a toxic femininity as well, okay? Or getting boys to, stand up and apologise. In some school in Australia, they got the boys to stand up and apologise to the girls for sexual assault. Yeah, stuff like this is wrong. Stuff like this is disgusting. And there definitely should be men's rights activists here to, stick up for men. Okay. But the issue I have with the Manosphere in the red pill community
is they seem like they're trying to prove the radical feminists right. You know, I've said this in many videos, okay? Or the video I made about, like, how I said the extremist in the Manosphere and Red Pill community is making it harder for men's rights, okay? It's true. It's like they're trying to prove radical feminists right. They present masculinity in the most toxic way, okay? It's alpha and masculine to be an insensitive asshole. You're supposed to dehumanize women and view them just for sex or for trophy girlfriends. Because if a man's kind, compassionate, and loves his wife, apparently he's a beta male, okay? The fact that they look up to Andrew Tate, and I'm not just talking about, I know people will say, like, well, a lot of the young men, they felt lost, and, you know, they never heard anything good about masculinity, and that, you know, there obviously is a problem in our society is why so many of them got taken in by Andrew Tate. But it's not just the young men in the Red Pill community. It's like these podcasters, you know, Fresh and Fit, Roller Tamashi. These are men old enough to know better. And these are guys that, like, I'm just going to outright say are abusive, sleazy, horrible. I don't care if that offends people. That is my opinion about them, okay? And this is what is being presented as the role models for young men. And if you speak out against it, you just get called misandric and man-hating, okay? But even, as I said, Christian conservatives, the ones that, you know, oh, we're supposed to be on the side of good, we follow the Bible and all that, they'll sit there and worship these guys like Andrew Tate, Justin Wallace.
Destiny, why do you hate Andrew Tate?
Why do I hate Andrew Tate? One is because I don't like the message he sells people. Two is because...
what's the message?
I wish that we could sell self-improvement without making everything so narrow in scope. Like, there are so many different paths to success. And to be fair, I've seen him give kind of contradictory messages on this. I saw him have a conversation with Sneeko, for instance, where he was very open about, like, it's not every man's life journey to become, like, the CEO of a major company. Some people need to be plumbers, whatever, which is good. But then in other videos, it always feels like the markers for success are the most materialistic, like, bankrupt, like, spiritually bankrupt things in the world.
I agree.
You know?
Right.
And that bothers me. And then two, assuming that he's not lying about everything he said online, he is undoubtedly a sex trafficker, which I think is kind of shitty. So, but there is the chance that he has lied. He is undoubtedly a sex trafficker. Undoubtedly a sex trafficker.
Okay, who just lead degenerate lives. If you leave aside the fact that Andrew Tate is a criminal, an abuser, an alleged rapist, you know, he lives a life of sleeping around, doesn't agree with being faithful. Both him and Justin Waller believe that to be an alpha male, you need to impregnate as many women as possible, but not be there to look after your kids. Okay, and I know this isn't the Honeybadgers' fault, but I'm just saying, they're sort of making out like, oh, you know, men have put up with this abuse for so long, and now they're, you know, they're just giving a little bit of what they got back. And I think, like, they're proving feminists right, okay? I don't believe that most men were horrible, oppressive people that treated their wives like garbage and all that, right? But being familiar with the Red Pill and the Manosphere as long as I have has made me think, okay, that there are more guys that have this attitude than originally, like, that I thought, okay? That you know, because, again, people say, oh, but the Red Pill's a response to feminism. And, okay, maybe it is to a degree, but I think there have always been people with this attitude. There have always been people that think women are less, women shouldn't vote, women, you know, don't take women seriously, they're silly, illogical creatures, they don't have good brains, they can't do stuff in our society. Or, you know, if you have a wife, she's just your servant, you're not supposed to see her as a human. You know, there have always been some people, and it's not just men. I mean, I've had I've called out women on my channel, alright? It's like, there's always been people with this toxic attitude. It's like people say, like, oh, women have been brainwashed by feminism. I didn't listen to feminism before, like, I came across the Manosphere, okay? It's the Manosphere and Red Pill community that's made me think that, like, oh, there was a good reason why, like, feminism started. I didn't take feminism seriously until I came across these communities.
You know, honestly, I think it's just the consequence of actually having ignored being so cruel to men for so long. There's now a critical mass of men who just don't give a flying fuck. And I don't even mean the guys who are engaging in sort of abusive or statements or saying all this stuff that gets women riled up. I mean the men who are just checking out. The men who would have at one point said, hey, bro, don't. Who would have actually exerted a negative social pressure on the assholes, which, have always existed. They're just checking out. And why should they continue to fight this fight? Why should they? When all they get is more cruelty. All right, so you know what? You guys deserve each other. It is
Okay, this is more of the guilt trip that, like, people have always done, like, if you criticise the manosphere. As in, you can call out the radicals of feminists. If ever you call out the radicals of the red pill, you'll get about how you're being so insensitive, about how men have been through so much, about how men have been demonised all these years, and you've always got this. Like, I mean, I always found, like, whenever I criticised extremists in the red pill community, you get these people who really lay on this guilt trip or like, well, men have been demonised for years, it's your turn. Men have been painted as the bad abusers, so now it's your turn. That kind of guilt trip, and that won't work anymore. That just won't, okay? I mean, one of the main reasons why people trying to guilt me, like, for criticising red pill stroke manosphere, is seeing how many people will worship Andrew Tate and defend Andrew Tate and talk about what brilliant advice for young men Andrew Tate gives after they have listened to that voice recording of Andrew Tate bragging about sexually abusing and strangling one of the women who he is accused of graping, one of the women who he texted, I loved graping you. People know that, people have heard that voice recording and still worship him and don't give a toss, okay, like if he's a rapist or not. We'll see him as the alpha male masculine role model that men should or want to be, while at the same time laying on this freaking guilt trip about the feminists have said masculinity is toxic for years. It's like, well, okay, well, here you are proving them right, so you don't get my sympathy, okay? Or just, or even incidents like this, the fact that, oh, Lauren Southern says she was in an abusive relationship. Oh, well, you're going to sympathise with her? No. Like, when, the article came out, and people in the manosphere were going through it, when she specifically talked about, like how hard it had got for her, and the attitude that people had was just like this.
Her situation became hell on earth. It was, she said, the only time in my life where I idealized dying. God, why are white women so spoiled? Like, but we're gonna compare staying at home with your kid to slavery in that you wanted to die.
And nervous for fear I'm going to get yelled at. Oh my God. Then he'd berate her for spending all her time on tasks other than earning money. I was told daily that I was worthless, pathetic, deadweight. All you do is sit around, take care of the baby, and do chores. When COVID shut down, the real-world public life or situation became hell on earth. It was, she said, the only time in my life where I idealized the dying. Oh my God. Be more dramatic, seriously.
Okay, now can you imagine what kind of response I would get if I was like, oh, look at this. Look, this guy here, he says his toxic ex-wife took him to the cleaners, made false allegations against him so he can't see his kids, and now he's depressed and suicidal. Lol, that teaches men for choosing the bad women instead of the nice girls, doesn't it? Like, what kind of response would you have? Or if I was just to say, oh, we're spoiled and privileged and complaining about nothing, okay? Because your manosphere red pill community is a cesspool of toxic guys who are more, like, obsessed with wanting to bring women down than anything to do with men's rights. Okay, most of the Manosphere stroke red pill community doesn't care about men's rights. Okay, the main things is like either being pissed off that women are succeeding in society and they don't want that, and wanting women to all be married by about the age of 20 and be barefoot in the kitchen because they want their like submissive housewife woman. Then there's the young men that are pissed off because they can't get any sex. And then there's like the alpha male red pill people whose main concern is like, well, how can we manipulate women into liking us, you know? All about like, I don't know, manipulation tactics, how to run women down so that they'll think that you're the alpha, how to put your wife and girlfriend in her place so that she'll think that you're better than her, and how to get away with cheating on her and treating her like crap. That's the majority of the red pill community, okay? So that sort of guilt trip is not going to fly with me. It's like, yes, I do think that there's serious men's rights issues, and yes, I do think that there's been, you know, unfair attitudes, like I've said, towards men that we should be standing up against, but I don't think most of the manosphere is that, okay? And I think Lauren is quite right to talk about the toxicity in the manosphere, and like guilt trips and, you know, all that is not going to it's not going to work with me, because I've seen how much toxic people there are in your community that prove it's like they're on a mission to prove the radical feminists right, not wrong.
She did a piece with you in Unheard, which it was one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you. And one of the things that she was highlighting is effectively that a lot of the internet narratives about how people ought to live their lives, you know, you have the red pill for men, this is how you should treat women, or the right-wing type of stuff, and then there's the equivalent from sort of radical feminists and whatever.
Don't marry
and
feds.
From
a listicle. If only someone had published a listicle of all the reasons why you shouldn't marry a fed.
It's the one thing
Southern would have been saved.
It's the one thing BuzzFeed should have made.
Well, actually, if she'd looked up information on how to spot either a narcissist or a psychopath or other signs of people that can be toxic in relationships, that may have actually helped her. Okay. But then your community believes that to be that way is alpha male, so they just go and tell a woman that she's lucky if she can find some controlling, oppressive asshole.
The way she tells it, at least, you kind of embodied some of those ideas in your own life, and it went spectacularly wrong. I think it's fair to say.
Yes, that is fair to say. Now, there have been...
This is exactly the kind of woman logic stuff that gets women like you clowned on, because you think that people are telling you that you have to meet a specific standard, and you're pretending, you're strawmanning that argument. Like, you know, anybody would know that keeping any relationship is not requiring a checklist of specific behaviors. It is about, essentially, if you want to be a good woman, just bring peace into your man's life and support him like a cheerleader, and everything will be fine. And also have the ability to discern whether or not a man is good for you, you know, like whether or not he's a fed. But not just that, like, you know, there's this thing where women do this thing where they end up breaking up with a guy or getting a divorce, and when they're asked why, they will say he changed. And I don't think that this is true in most cases. I don't think that's a thing that happens. I think that generally people don't change. It's just that their partners were not paying attention when they were dating them, and they just jumped into something too quickly.
Okay, that is not just women, and I'm sure they know this, because I have heard so many times from guys in the manosphere about how their toxic ex-wives or toxic ex-girlfriends hid their personalities, their true personalities, from them for some time. Or I've read comments where they're talking about this, where they say that, you know, she hides a personality, that they didn't realise, you know, what she was truly like, you know, until months or years later. I don't know, when it comes to people, right, who've been in toxic relationships, like most of them, men or women, they say, like, the person seemed charming and really nice at first. Now, there is a thing called love bombing, okay, which is done by some people, like,
who have certain personality disorders, and that is like, I mean, at the very, very beginning of the relationship, if somebody's love bombing you, they are too full on, too straight away, like acting like they're madly in love with you, telling you how wonderful they are, how wonderful you are, maybe buying you loads of presents or talking about marrying you when it's like the second date or something. That's what, like, psychologists describe as love bombing, which is a red flag. Okay, well, a major red flag, okay, that somebody is toxic and that you shouldn't date them, all right, because, I said in the other video I did when I talked about Lauren Southern, in another video I did, like, the cycle of abuse, like, well, if you're talking about narcissist abuse, like, there's idealization or love bombing, then devaluing, and then discarding. Okay, so, if somebody's too nice, because these guys in the Manosphere, they always say, like, oh, if a woman ends up in a toxic relationship, they always say, like, it's because women like bad guys, and I'd say, well, no, because most of the time people, men or women, say it's actually the person they were overly nice to start with. Okay.
There is no modern day evidence that women prefer bad boys, either when they're ovulating or when they're not. There's actually more evidence to prove the opposite. There is evidence that women are attracted to men with dark triad traits, but one of these traits is narcissism, which correlates with physical attractiveness and extroversion. And in much the same way, men are attracted to women with dark triad traits, as narcissism correlates with physical attractiveness. So once the physical attractiveness and the confidence is controlled for, dark triad traits actually add nothing for either gender. Basically, you can be confident and nice and you'll still be attractive to women and men.
But when you get people who say that the person they were with hid their true personality from them for like months or years, I don't know whether they're telling the truth or whether they just don't want to admit that they ignored the red flags because maybe they feel a bit embarrassed or whether they feel a bit bad about themselves. I don't know. Okay. But that's not just men or women. All right. Now, when it comes to accountability for your choices in partner, because like I keep saying, they always say this in the Manosphere. They always, if they've been in relationships with toxic women, they all get together and they moan about women and they talk about how, they don't trust women anymore. But whenever it's a woman who claims to have been in a relationship with a toxic man, the first thing any of them say is like, this is your fault, you chose him, take accountability for your choices, blah, 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 blah. But they don't think that they're accountable. Okay, now, when it comes to accountability for your bad choices, it's like, yeah, I do think that people are accountable for who they choose to date, okay, but I don't think that it's just as black and white as, like, calling somebody stupid or calling somebody an idiot for choosing the wrong person, okay? It's not as black and white as that, because you don't know the reasons for why they were attracted to the wrong person. Like, some people, it can be because they are very lonely, okay? Some people ignore the red flags because they're lonely. Some people, they have very low self-esteem and don't think they can do any better. Some people it's because they're toxic themselves, so they're attracted to people similar to themselves. Some people, I think it's if they haven't had the best parents and the best guidance in life, they're not the best at making decisions on, who to date. And, I've heard it said before that sometimes women, if they didn't have a stable father figure in their life, they find it harder to tell the difference between good men and toxic men. Because they haven't, seen that sort of positive masculinity in their life, okay? I also think, personally, that sometimes men, if they've had toxic mothers, are more likely to date toxic women. Okay. And Erin Pizzi has actually said something about this. Actually, Erin Pizzi has said before that she thinks that men that have had narcissistic mothers are more likely to go on and choose narcissistic women. Okay.
And then I realised, far too late, my father was such a brilliant man for all the terrifying monster he was in many ways. I really, really enjoyed listening to him because he was an old China hand. He was an Arabist. I mean, he was all sorts of things. And I looked for that sort of man without even realising it. And which is fairly disastrous. In many cases, again, it goes back to that thing. There are people who are innocent victims of their partner's violence. They quite genuinely really fall in for headlines for somebody and then find, my God, he's a raving psychopath. And you can't pick those out. I don't care how practiced you are. But the majority are the women that I've said who are victims of their own violence, and their choices are based from their own childhood damage. Now you'll find an awful lot of men going for narcissistic women. Because the man himself has very bad image of himself, he's had probably an extremely damaging relationship with his mother. And what does he do? He goes out, and the girl who's in the center of the room getting all the attention, everybody wants to be with her, that's the one he'll pick. He never asked himself why he does that. And it's disastrous. He is responsible for his decision. Of course he is. And I don't let people off the hook any more than I let me off the hook. You know, we are. The choices we make bring consequences into our lives. And the tragedy is when people don't even think that they actually get involved with a dangerous, violent person. And I look at them and say, and you chose to have children with him? What have you done to your children? You've landed them in this situation. And they look at you because they've never even thought that they have a responsibility of choosing a parent who is not going to be dangerous to the child.
So this is why I don't think it's just as black and white as telling people that they're idiots for choosing the wrong person, because some people don't know why they have a problem with being attracted to toxic people. And I think this is sometimes why some people say, you know, or men are trash, or women are bad people, okay, because they keep dating the wrong people. I also do think that there are some people that they're the toxic one, but don't realise, and then blame the opposite sex, okay, when they should do some self-reflection, okay. So I do think people are accountable for their choices in partners, but and that's not to victim blame. This isn't saying, you know, nobody deserves to be treated badly, but it's just for your own benefit is why you should self-reflect, because it's for your own benefit that you should work out why you're attracted to toxic people, so you can like learn and grow and sort of let, you know, and you know, choose nicer people, okay. Erin Pizzi also, she said, you know, again, when talking about accountability for your choices, she said that she goes by the rule of three, as in, she says, if you've been in a relationship with one person who's toxic or abusive, she said that could be an accident. They may have genuinely not realised what this person was like. If they've been in a relationship with two abusive people, she says that they've been careless with their choice in partners then. But if you've been in a relationship with three or more abusive people, she said, then it's you. You know, you're the one who's choosing them. You need to look at yourself and take accountability for your choices. And I think, well, that, you know, sounds fair enough.
You know, Stefan Molyneux used to be on YouTube, and he used to do call-in shows. I mean, I think he's still on the internet somewhere, maybe BitChute or something. And he used to take calls. And very, very frequently, people would call in, women would call in, having relationship problems, wanting to break up with guys, wanting to get a divorce, whatever. Or they would talk about their history. And very frequently, they would talk about their childhood. And what would often come up is they would blame their father or their stepfather for being abusive, for being mean, for being all these things. And Molyneux would always say, what about the mother? and they would have nothing bad to say about their mothers. In most cases, like 90% of cases. And he would say, well, at the very least, you have to consider that your mother, even if this man who was your stepfather or your father was abusive, even if that's true, you have to look at why your mother chose to sleep with him or marry him. Like, why? And this is the thing, like...
Okay, I think I know which rant from Stefan Molyneux he is talking about here. And this is a prime example about how guys in the Manosphere deflect blame onto the woman for everything all the time and make everything women's fault. Because, yeah, okay, if a woman chooses to breed with a toxic man, knowing that he is a toxic man, yes, she is accountable for that, okay? Because it's not only, you know, ruining her life, but it's going to be ruining children's lives as well. But also, if a man chooses to breed with a toxic woman, knowing that she is a toxic woman, he is also playing a part in ruining children's lives as well. But also, it's a way to deflect blame onto the woman to sort of deflect so people stop being angry at the man. This is what they do all the time in the red pill community. Like, if guys come and they complain about their toxic mothers and the way their mothers treated them, they'll sit there in the red pill community talking about how terrible women are. But as soon as anybody says, well, my dad did this and my dad, or I had a bad father because of this, straight away their first response is like, yes, but why did your mother pick him? Why did she pick him? Why didn't she choose to breed with a nice guy? It's deflecting the blame onto the woman, because although, okay, yes, she is accountable, the guy's still accountable for his attitude, and you will sit there and blame all women in claim to have taken the red pill and understand female nature and all that, when you will sit there in the red pill, they will sit there in this cesspool of woman hatred, blaming all women and making out that it's only women that can do wrong. But as soon as anybody points out that, well, men can do wrong as well, then you get that deflection. But it's the woman's fault. It's the woman's fault.
Women who choose the assholes will fucking end this race. They will fucking end this human race if we don't start holding them fucking accountable.
Obviously, lots of profanity here. We should point out.
Yes.
I agree with that. They are the gatekeepers.
He's talking to a caller.
They're the gate. Yes. Look, women who choose assholes guarantee child abuse. Women who choose assholes guarantee criminality, sociopathy, politicians, all the cold-hearted jerks who run the world.
Men
came out of the vaginas of women who married assholes. And I don't know how to make the world a better place without holding women accountable for choosing assholes.
It's women's fault men do terrible things. That's what he's saying here.
Your dad was an asshole because your mother chose him. Because it works on so many women.
Listen to how he's saying.
If asshole wasn't a great reproductive strategy, it would have been gone long ago. Women...
By the way, this is the core of the pickup artist, pseudo-scientific garbage worldview.
I'm a nice guy, so give me sex. That's why I'm a nice guy.
And assholes only succeed, whatever that even means.
Because women.
Because women, and usually, frankly, that's either a fundamental misinterpretation or they're just equating being an asshole with having confidence. Anyways, that's where this it comes from.
Keep that black bastard flame alive. They cup their hands around it. They protect it with their bodies. They keep the evil of the species going by continually choosing these guys. If being an asshole didn't get women, there would be no assholes left. If women chose nice guys over assholes, we would have a glorious and peaceful world in one generation.
The term nice guys, remember that
Women
term.
determine the personality traits of the men because women choose who to have sex with and who to have children with and who to expose those children to. I get that you're angry at your dad, and you have every reason to be angry at your dad. Your dad is who he is fundamentally because your mother was willing to fuck him and have you. willing and eager to fuck the monster. Stop fucking monstrous, we get a great world. Keep fucking monstrous, we get catastrophes. We get war, we get nuclear weapons, we get national debts, we get incarcerations and prison guards and all the other florid assholes who rule the world. Women worship at the feet of the devil and wonder why the world is evil. And then, you know what they say? We're victims.
Okay, so this rant of Stefan Molyneux, and I assume this is the one they're talking about, but, you know, regardless, this rant of Stefan Molyneux just proves how they hamster rationalise everything. Everything in the world is women's fault. Because, like, yeah, if women all chose to breed with nice guys instead of bad guys, the world would be a better place. But also, if men all chose to breed with nice women instead of horrible women, okay, the world would also be a better place. It's a two-way thing. The other thing that I kind of find really funny about this rant as well, though, is like, he doesn't seem to be taking into consideration that what makes a nice guy and what makes an arsehole is a matter of opinion. Because I would say that Stefan Molyneux, being one, a misogynist, and two, a white supremacist, makes him an absolute arsehole, okay? And that he is, like, definitely red flagged and that no woman should breed with him, okay? But he probably thinks he's one of the nice guys and one of the top guys that you should breed with, okay? And that's why I just find it quite funny when he's like, women should breed with nice guys, not assholes. It's like, well, okay, well, too bad somebody didn't tell your wife that then, isn't it, before she decided to breed with you.
Women are not asked to be discerning when it comes to men. They just take whatever, like, you know, sparks their vajayjay, like whatever makes them wet, and then they just go out with that guy, and then that guy turns out to be a piece of shit, and then they say, well, this is what all men are like, because they don't see other men. They're like not people, right? So
okay, we all know full well that he has just described here what the majority of the Manosphere and Red Pill community do, okay? They know full well that a lot of the guys will go for whichever woman gets their dick hard, sorry to sound so crude, and then if she's not a very nice person, sit here and talk about how all women this, and all women are just horrible people. And they know full well that that's what they do in the Manosphere and Red Pill community. They know that, okay? Now, in Lauren Southern's case, I don't see her saying that all men are bad people. In fact, I don't think she even seems hateful towards her ex. Like, I mean, she said further on in the Triggernometry interview that she still actually cares about her ex, despite, you know, saying he was abusive, okay? So, like, she doesn't seem like as much full of hatred as the guys in the Manosphere and Red Pill community, and some of them, yes, they do go from crazy woman to crazy woman because they go for whoever they think is the hottest, rather than, like, you know, actually looking inwards, and then they blame all women, and they know that these guys do that, yeah. And it's really interesting how they will accuse women of doing this, and there's going to be some women that do this, I know, but, you know, we're talking about Lauren Southern here, and she's not one, she doesn't seem to be one of the women doing this, but they'll this kind of thing in the Manosphere is like where they'll deny, like, hating women, despite the fact that they blame women for everything, have this men are good and women are bad attitude, and try to sell the idea that women are, like, their nature is everything bad and men are just these angels and all that. They do this and they deny that that's misogyny. Or when you get these, like, really angry men, they're like, oh, but they've been hurt, they've got a right to sound off and all that. Yeah, the other way around, they do not think that as a woman. Like, he's sat here, like, angry, being like, oh, yeah, these women will go whoever they think is the hottest and then blame all men because they don't see the other men, blah, 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 blah. It's like, she's not blaming all men, okay? What you've just described here is, like, the way most of the Manosphere act, as in that they blame all women for their choices.
Lauren Southern got all tingly over this guy, and then jumped into something. Didn't get to know him, obviously, because she didn't realize he was a Fed. And then it goes south, and then where she lands at the end is, oh, well, I guess the trad life thing is just bullshit then. And it's like, no, you fucked up. You fucked up. This is the thing, like, this is what I mean. Women have to understand that, like, not every man is a catch, and maybe you're measuring this by the wrong criteria. And you should be more discerning. You should be looking for something else. If you want something stable, find a man that's stable. If you want something that's just gonna, like, make you hot and bothered, then go ahead, go out with the Andrew Tate guy if you want. You know? But don't pretend like you can turn one into the other. And that's the thing, like, Lauren Southern will never do this, okay? She chose a man that excited her, and then had a baby with him, and got married to him, even though he lived in a different country, and then when it didn't work out, she was like, oh, the TradCons lied to me. No, dude, that's your fault. Like, I'm sorry, but am I wrong? That's your fault.
Okay, once again, You don't say this to the men, you only say this to the women. The thing about the trad life, okay, I don't think Lauren was actually saying that, like, the trad life doesn't work for everybody. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not in a position to, speak for her, obviously. I'm just saying, like, my take on this is that she just felt a little bit like, because she'd spent so much time in that sort of, like, Sophia, where, say, like, areas in the Manosphere and Christian conservative and all that, they tell women that that's what every man wants, when it's not what every man wants, or that every woman would be happy in that role, when not every woman would be happy in that role. Okay. But that said, if the guy was an abuser, it wouldn't make any difference, okay? So I do slightly agree that, like, it's not the trad life's fault, like, if they were living a different life than the trad life, if she was a Korea woman or whatever, if he's an abuser, he would be an abuser regardless. There'd be no pleasing him, okay? But I do get where she's coming from, in that, like, maybe people selling the idea that the trad life is an absolute fairy tale for everybody is a little bit of a lie, okay? It works really well for some people, not for others. And like I said, there's a fair few of these, like, women who they tell other women that, you're supposed to be at home with your kids, and you're not meant to be focused on your career, you're meant to be focused on your kids, yet they're career women. Okay, so it seems also like there are some that aren't telling the exact truth. Okay, so I get where Lauren Southern is coming from, but that said, the lifestyle choice, like, that's not to blame for the fact that the guy that she married sounds like he just wasn't a very good guy.
And the other thing is that the red pillars, I don't think they really advocate for a true traditionalist lifestyle either.
Well, when it comes to red pill, I think it depends which area of the red pill you're looking at, right? Because when I first came across the MGTOW, men going their own way community, they seem to think that the traditional lifestyle is harmful to men. They seem to think that if a woman is at home with her kids, that she's parasiting off of the men. I've shown this in other videos before, because this is the thing with the red pill community and Manosphere that actually irritates me. Is like, yeah, there's this area of the MGTOW that say, like, oh, women are parasiting off of men. If he's the provider, he's the workhorse. And they completely disregard the woman's worth as being the one who, brings the children into the world, and her body has to go through all this, and that she's the one that does most of the childcare and looks after the home and all that. They just discard that sort of worth and just say that she's parasiting off of the man, and the man's the only one contributing. Okay, but then there's other areas of the Manosphere and red pill community that say they don't like women working, or at least they don't like women having, putting their careers first, or some of them, like, they seem to think that a woman having a career is somehow pinching men's jobs, as if, like, a woman hasn't got as much right to have a career as what men have. And, a lot of them say, oh, women have been lied to, they've been told that pursuing a career will make them happy, when really it's being at home with kids that will make them happy. Okay, so you've got those sort of two areas. But then there's also, like, talking about red pill, there's also those in the red pill that sort of, they hold women up to, they want women to be traditional, but not the men. Okay, because I've heard quite a few times in the Manosphere and red pill community that they say that it's Western women expecting men to still be traditional, but they're walking away, but the women are walking away from their traditional roles, as in they want a man who's a provider, but don't think that they should have to cook and clean and all that kind of stuff, is what some men in the Manosphere stroke red pill community have said. And I don't know whether that's true, whether some women are like that. I mean, I don't know what their experience with women is, but I would say there's a fair few in the red pill community who they are holding women up to traditional values, but don't think the man should be a traditionalist. As in, and what I mean is like, say like the guys from Fresh and Fit, for example, they tell women that they need to find a man and get married as young as possible, while she's still young and pretty, because the sexual market value is going to go down. But then they tell men that they should be sleeping around as much as possible, and they tell men that their sexual market value goes up, and that, like, when you're like they're middle-aged or something, there should be like some 20-year-old virgin waiting for them, right? And that then when they find her, and marry her, it's okay for the man to cheat. Like I said, they've been expressing this like opinion for years that it's okay for the man to cheat on his wife or girlfriend, but not the woman to cheat on a husband or boyfriend. So the point is, I'm getting at, as some of them are holding women up to be like the traditional woman, but they don't think they should be traditional, okay? And but also it's like you get some people, like say some Christian conservatives, they value both roles. With a traditional relationship, they value both roles, both the male role as the provider and the woman role as the being like the stay-at-home mum. Some of them, they value both roles, but then you get some of the red pillars who they only seem to value the male role, okay? As in that they'll say like, well, once again, it's okay for the man to cheat because he's providing for the woman and he's doing all this for the woman, and, you know, she's got to just shut up and be submissive and weak because, you know, he's looking after her and he's protecting her. So they sort of devalue the role of the woman. In other words, they kind of think that only the male role is important, okay? So that's the different areas of, like, the red pill manosphere.
Like, really?
I mean, they're a mixed bag. Like, I think that, like, okay, I'll put it like this, and this is not, I wouldn't say this is a defense, this is just like me being real about what the supposed Manosphere, PUA, red pill part of the community is. They're essentially very, very sexually successful guys trying to give advice to guys who are not going to be as successful as them. So you have guys that are not interested in the trad life giving advice to guys who are, and those guys are hoping to use the skills they'll learn to find, like, the one, and not necessarily to, like, sleep with as many women as possible, because most of those guys aren't going to. And it's not an insult against them, it's just that, you know, they're not in that top 10%, so they're probably just like, well, look, I just need to learn how to, you know, get right with my money, or invest better, or get in shape, or whatever things they want to learn, how to talk to women, etc. And it's mostly, I would guarantee you, them, the majority of those guys, they also didn't have a masculine role model in their life, because we're 3 generations in to essentially making the growing up without a dad thing the norm. And so most of these guys don't have a father, or, you know, they don't know him or whatever. And so they're like trying to navigate this environment. Again, this is another thing that I hate. And look, I'm not defending the red pill guys because I'm a fan. I'm just saying the truth of the matter is that most of the men who are in the manosphere are there because the regular world does nothing for them. And they're looking for solutions, and they're looking for answers, and these are the only people who offer them anything. And even if the standards that those guys are, well, not standards, but the way that the actual content creators, like Fashion Fits and stuff, the way that they live their life is sort of out of the reach of the average man. The average man is still looking for them because there's nobody else. And people like this, like Lauren Southern and the Triggernometry guys, they're going to shit on those guys, and they're doing it from their position of their own clout. Because these Triggernometry guys, they make good money. You know, they probably are married with kids and everything else. So it's easy to point at the guys that are like, you know, they're directionless and they're frustrated and they're trying to figure things out. And they're just, you're just, you know what you should be, what you should do is what, like, you know, most men have been trying to do for at least a couple generations that has given them nothing. You know, happy wife, happy life. Just, you know, bend the knee to her. Just do what she says. Don't try not to get divorced. It's fine. You know, try anyway. We know the data's not in your favor, but you're not allowed to be upset about it. And that's just bullshit. Like, these guys are allowed to be upset about it. And it's, you know what? If they're going to people like Fresh and Fit or whatever for advice, that's not their fault. That's not Fresh and Fit's fault. That's on you guys, because you didn't provide them with anything except that, well, just try anyway, bro. And that's just not enough. Sorry, but that's just the thing. These guys are not helpful. Lauren Southern is not helpful. Like, she's just saying, oh, looks like it didn't work. Oh, well, I guess we don't have any answers because my life is a mess. And I know you guys are beneath me because otherwise you'd be doing better, but you can't be because I'm doing bad. Therefore, no one can be doing as well as I am, right? It's, you know, sorry, but it's cringe. I couldn't make it to this video. It's so cringe.
Okay, first of all, I don't know why, like, Brian is so upset with the Triggernometry guys, because these guys are just interviewing Lauren just the same way as that they interview many different people with different opinions. They're not a group of people that are here to attack the manosphere. And when people do criticise the, like, extremist of the manosphere, it normally is the content creators, not the people that are taking advice from them. In fact, I would say people like Fresh and Fit, I think that they are scamming these guys out of money and giving them very bad advice. Like you say, like Brian says, like, oh, men just have to try not to get divorced. Is it as if, like, divorce all depends on, like, the woman and what, like, the woman wants. But, like, I mean, problems in a marriage can be, like, both genders. And as we've heard repeatedly, Fresh and Fit actually tell men it should be okay to cheat on your wife. And cheating is one of the leading causes of divorce, okay? So these guys give them extremely bad advice, okay? But also he says that, like, oh, these are guys that are sexually successful talking to guys that are not sexually successful. Well, first of all, it's questionable about whether these guys actually are all successful, okay? Myron Gaines, he's extremely angry and bitter, and I think it comes across because he can't get a woman to stay with him, okay? Also, I've heard that a lot of the sex that he does get is because he asks the women who go on his show some of them, if they will prostitute themselves to go on his show, because most of them are OnlyFans women, and if they go on his show, it does their OnlyFans really well. So a lot of them want to go on his show for that. And he says, like, I'll let you on my show if you'll have sex with me, okay? But what I'm saying is, like, I don't think he's actually really sexually successful. He's also been accused of sexual assault a fair few times, which people can say, like, oh, well, you know, but women can lie. We shouldn't just hashtag believe women. It's like, okay, fair enough, but he's sat there with, as I've shown in previous videos, he sat there with Justin Waller talking about how to, you know, sexually assault women, how to, like, he said program them because they're at their most vulnerable or something like that when you're having sex with them. It's, you know, it's disgusting stuff, okay? As we know, he supports Andrew Tate and defends Andrew Tate despite all the evidence showing that that guy's abusive and dangerous. He's had Charleston White on their show bragging about raping women before, and I'm sorry, I do understand that there's a lot of unhappy, downbeaten young men out there, but if somebody is going to sit there and laugh along with a guy who says it's okay to rape women and thinks there's nothing wrong with it, I'm going to say there's a good reason why women stay away from guys like that, okay? I do understand that there are some guys, yes, they haven't had the best upbringing, they probably haven't got the best relationship with their mother, they might not have, like he said, had a stable father figure, okay? And we need to be understanding to guys like that, but it's like, it's also still true that, like, I mean, some of the guys who can't get a girlfriend, that it's like because of their own issues, like because of their own sort of like problems, and you can, you know, they'll always say, like, when it's the men, they'll always say, you know, they always want you to sympathise with the men. Fair enough, but I don't ever hear them saying, like, oh, you know, but Trigglypuff and Big Red, I mean, they've got mental health issues. They must have had a traumatic childhood. They didn't have the best parents, presumably. You know, these women that turned to the radical feminism, you know, they probably didn't have a stable home life. They didn't have anybody else to support them. You know, that works both ways, okay? But they know full well that they don't have any sympathy for, like, if a woman hates men, she's just considered a bad person, you know. It's like, there's no, like, sympathy for, oh, what did she go through? What kind of childhood did she have? Like, oh, was her father abusive? Is it understandable that if a woman had an abusive father that she hates men? It's like, no, of course not. It's only understandable one way, okay? But also, like, if they think, like, you know, these guys are desperately looking for a stable male role model, well, why don't good men actually step up and be the good role models? Like, why does it take some blimmin' criminal, ex-pimp, ex-sex trafficker, rapist to come in and sprout all this, like, stuff that they want to hear? You know, stuff that he doesn't live by himself. You know, like, he says he promotes discipline and hard work in men, but then, like, he just got rich through being a scam artist and an abuser. You know what I mean? It's like, well, why don't you be the positive male role models then? I also want to point out as well, like, you know, well, we're on the subject of how, you know, all these sort of, you say, like, incels and all that, about how they're all, like, victims in our society. I want to show, like, a clip of, there's some woman, who she talked about some bad experience she had, like when she was dating a guy who was an incel. And, like, when she talks about this, just look at the absolute evil glares that she gets from the MRAs when she talks about this.
I actually have first-hand experience with an incel because I went out with one for 6 months. And I can say firsthand that I think that as women, we don't have a responsibility to fix men. And even though I think that men who are, you know, before anyone says anything, I think that men who are obese, disabled, think that they're conventionally unattractive and mentally unstable, don't have very good living situations. all of them deserve romance. But if you are as entitled as the man I went out with was, as an entitled and vile as a good percentage of the incel community are, you do not deserve to get laid. You really don't. And I think that I agree that men who are struggling to find love and therefore go into these like alternate toxic cultures, you know, these cultures indulge their own really, really distorted view of the world, that women hate them and, you know, women are just out to be mean to them. I think it comes from a kind of level of entitlement that a lot of men are taught by women and men from a very young age. And in return of the new like way that society functions, where women have a lot more autonomy to reject men, they just can't handle it a lot of the time. Okay. And I think that even though I agree with like a lot of what second speaker you said, I think that kind of speaking about these men who can be, as I've realised, incredibly dangerous as like babies and like you want to take care of them, I think that's a very toxic way of looking at them, and I can say that firsthand from someone who has to go to therapy because of what this guy did to me. Okay. So thanks.
Okay. Can you just give the mic to the person in front of you?
As an incel,
You see the absolute evil glares that they give her for saying that. Now, what did she say that was wrong? Did she say that incels are all losers, that they're all bad people? No, she specifically said that she thinks people that have problems, you know, still deserve to find love. She just said that if somebody was as vile as the person that she got with, that they just don't deserve to get laid. Okay, and we all know that some of the guys in the some of the extremists in the red pill, they're the ones that are toxic. They're the ones that have got personality disorders or some kind of mental health issues. And that's why they can't make a relationship work. And that's why they could be abusive in a relationship. We all know that. But they sort of like give her these evil glares for saying that, because they're like, shut up, woman. We're trying to say that men are good and women are bad and that they're all victims, you know. And it's when she's got every right to talk about her experience. Or if you're gonna like say, well, for a guy to have some sort of mental health issues or to be an abuser, he must have been through some trauma. It's like, well, then surely you've got to say it about the women as well, abusive women. Like, you know, people do not pop out of the womb bitter and twisted. Okay, people don't pop out of the womb hating women or hating men. On both sides, they must have had something horrible happen to them.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not offering anything. You're just saying, like, you know, because look, for a lot of these guys, I think the majority of guys, okay, so you're a man, let's say you're a Zoomer, you're like 20 something, you have a job, you're not in your mama's basement with Cheeto on your beard or whatever, like none of these, you know, negative stereotypes. You're just a regular guy, you have a job, you're working on your credit score, you're decently well educated, and you can't find a woman because the modern dating market is an absolute trash fire, and you're trying to navigate this without getting into trouble. You want to get Me Too'd, you don't want to get arrested, you want to get, you know, some crazy chick attacking you, breaking her nail, and calling the cops. You're trying to navigate all of these minefields. You want to end up divorced, you want to end up losing your kids, you don't want to end up getting, you know, into these, and these are all real problems and concerns that men have. And the truth is that the environment, the social environment, it essentially not just permits women to do this, it encourages women to do this, to use men in these ways, to use them as money, to, you know, grab that bag while securing their own bag. Like, this is not unusual that women are encouraged to be entitled beyond compare, and men are being told by the sort of white noise of our culture that women are to deserve that men are the reason, like women are oppressed by men, like that is, so men have to somehow gain favor with women while being aware of their own privilege. And like, how do you do that? Like, if I was like 20 something, I wouldn't want to bother at all. And so you have men are either choosing to walk away completely, which a lot of them are doing, and it's growing in number, or you get men that are like, well, I'm going to try and figure this out, because I don't think it's, you know, they have an inkling of it, they have a gut instinct that tells them that this can't be something that's completely out of their control, because of course men want to feel like they have some agency and some control over their destiny, so they go to what? They go to advice. They try to find people who have done it, who are an example that they want to follow, and that's where these sort of red pill influencers come in, and they're helping them. And you know what? No one else is. No one else. Like, I mean,
so just to be clear here then, young men have this minefield of problems, like they might be Me Too'd, or they might end up, if they get married, they might end up being divorced, or they have trouble finding a relationship in the first place. So they come to these red pill guys, these guys like, as I've already mentioned, Fresh and Fit bring a proud grapist on their show to brag about graping women. They go to these guys because they're worried about being Me Too'd. They go to these guys for advice, okay? Or if guys are worried about being divorced and screwed over in the divorce courts, the best people to listen to are, again, people from the Fresh and Fit group who tell you to cheat on your wives, they're the best people to give you advice on how to not get divorced, are they? Once again, these guys do not help anybody.
You can say we do, but I'm saying we don't have the reach. Like we don't have.
I'm going to get in there and say why. Right? You say the red pill influencers are helping them. I'm not entirely certain that that's the case. They are fulfilling a desire. I'm not sure if they're helping it. The thing is that the reason why they have the clout is because they give the perception that following them will result in getting married and having children or finding a woman. Or they say, if you do this, then you will get the life that you want.
For a lot of them, no. Okay, it may depend which channels you're looking up, but a lot of the red pill community, it is actually just advice on how to get laid, and it's probably pretty much bad advice anyway. Fresh and Fit, like they say stuff like dump a woman if she doesn't sleep with you straight away, but then at the same time complain about women having too high body count and say women are low value if they have a high body count, at the same time that they tell men to dump women that don't sleep with them straight away, and tell the women on their show that they should sleep with a guy straight away, and that they shouldn't make and wait for sex. Okay, so it's all sleazy, it's all degenerate, it's not about love, it's not about having feelings, it's not about finding the right woman. A lot of the channels, it's just about getting laid, okay? And when Myron Gaines wrote his book, Women Deserve Less, he copied, apparently the first intro of his book was just copied from Roosh V book, and Roosh V, who is an ex-pickup artist, in his books, because I haven't read his books, I've just listened to some of the people that evaluated his books, and in Roosh V's books it's questionable about whether the sex he had is always consensual. But this is what I mean. They are taking advice, these men are taking advice from sleazy, abusive, dangerous guys, and the red pill community will get mad at you for saying that, despite it being true, and be like, misandric, you hate men. But it's like, well, I'm sorry, but when it's people promoting that, yeah, people should speak out against it. These guys do more harm to men than good.
And I think in a lot of ways, because I think that we would have a larger following if we said, the way that you get women is by being a men's issues advocate. I mean, that's absurd, right? But that's what they do.
That's not what we do.
That's not what we do. That's not our focus. But if we did do that, if we said to this vast ocean of very desperate men, yeah, you know what? We have exactly the oil and vinegar combination that if you put on your salad will attract a woman to you. Guess what we would be able to sell in droves and multitudes? If we have the exact, I don't know, what is the code? Hell divers, arrow up, down.
Oh,
we have that. We cracked
right, down.
Yeah, we cracked the code. And if you just, with 5 easy payments of $9.99, we'll send you the code that will bring a woman into your life. If we did stuff like that, we would probably have more clout. We would probably, or if alternatively you went on the other end of the spectrum and said, well, men are totally oppressing you ladies and you do not need one and you should be so happy with your single lifestyle. If we were female single lifestyle influencers, you got those two poles that are making a ton of money. When you look at it, it's terrifying. Because what they're making money off of is the destruction of the breeding colony, is the slow rotting and degradation of the breeding colony, of our society's inability to get people pair bonded. Sorry.
Go ahead. I was just saying, I wasn't trying to make this about what we were doing that they weren't doing. I was simply saying that the men are they're looking for answers. These guys are providing something, some direction.
Yes.
And even if it isn't ultimately what they need, even if it isn't ultimately helpful, they're not getting alternatives from anyone else. Instead, they're just getting attacked. Even for seeking help that might not actually be what they actually need. But it doesn't matter because they're being attacked for it, right? They're being criticized. The red pill's getting thrown under the bus at every turn, which includes us, whether we are part of that or not, doesn't matter because we're all connected. It's irrelevant. And people who knew us, this reminds me of, I know that she has since sort of mentioned us in a better light, but she went ahead and did something very similar when she was making her video, right? Where it was like, oh my god, the red pill, the Manosphere is just as bad as the feminists. We're still hearing this. We're still getting this message. It's the same thing on both sides. And Lauren Sutter's doing it too. She's like, I'm reality pilled. This is and it's just not the case. And instead, what's happening is you have, yes, there are competing narratives. Yes, women get one and men get one. But the one for women is actively anti-male and it's everywhere. The one for men is in a relatively small corner of the internet. And even then, it's not there specifically to make men hate women. At worst, maybe it scapegoats women more than women are comfortable with. Because I don't think it's necessarily unfair. I think that there's, there are women who do bad things and nobody wants to talk about it, and there are men who do good things and nobody wants to talk about it. But I think that what I'm ultimately landing at is it's not about what we do compared to what the rest of the Manosphere does. It's about why are men seeking this out because they need help and no one else is giving them any. And when they go here, they're still getting scolded because they went to the wrong place. And what's offered an alternative? What's the alternative? I'll tell you what the alternative.
Okay, that shoe-on head who he mentioned, that's a woman who, she's gone more sort of left-leaning now, and she's criticised the Manosphere before, but she still makes content sticking up for men, okay? She still defends men. She didn't stop. Okay, and this is one of the things that annoys me a little bit about some of these MRAs, attitude towards her and Lauren Southern, or any other woman that speaks out against the Manosphere, is they sort of try to make out that if a woman speaks out against the Manosphere, that she's somehow being unfair to men, that she's been unsympathetic to men. And again, I think this is trying to lay on the guilt trip, because it's not true. Okay, for argument's sake, I will say the radicals of the Manosphere and the Red Pill are extremely misogynistic. And I'm not saying you shouldn't criticise women or call out bad behaviour in women. No, but I'm saying it's trying to make out that being an actual woman is something bad. It's something inferior. That, you know, I mean, everybody has flaws, but it's very like, women are not as good as men, you know, whether good as in good at stuff or good person. It's always men can love really deeply, while women are just these shallow gold diggers that only want the top 10% of people and 10% of guys, and it's just not true. Okay, you only have to walk out your door and observe real couples to see that it's not true. You know, some of these guys, they seem to get their view from the Manosphere, like the world view. Okay, I do think that maybe some of them are very socially isolated and actually really don't sort of observe many other people and see how the real world works. Because I see some comments where guys will say something like, unless you have rock hard pecs and are a millionaire, there's no chance of getting a woman. And I think, like, what are you talking about? Just go outside. Average men get girlfriends, okay? Now, if it's a case that these guys, they're after a woman who looks like a supermodel, well, okay, yeah, she's going to be more fussy, but that would mean that you're aiming for the top 10%, okay? Because I've said in other videos as well, it's like, they go on about women being too fussy, but some of the red pillars, they come out with lists of things. Like, I mean, if you're going to say, first of all, if you're going to say, a woman's got to be under 25, like, regardless of how old the man is, then straight away, like, you've, like, already lowered it to, like, being only a small percentage of women. And then out of those women, you don't want somebody who's overweight. And, you know, as that they're always pointing out in the Manosphere, a lot of women and men, well, a lot of women and men are overweight in the West, but they only point it out in women. Okay, so if every single man wants a really young, really slim, really attractive woman, and she's not meant to have got one tattoo, she's not meant to wear hoop earrings, they've all got to be virgins. You know, some of them come out with like lists of stuff and then sit there and say that women are too fussy. And this is what I mean when I say that the advice they're getting is like really silly, because the advice they're getting is going to keep them single. Like, if these are guys who having trouble getting one woman and they're coming out with, and they're being told lists of reasons to reject women, they're being told that, you know, women are all bad people, and they're getting this image in their head that women are horrible, mean, nasty people that are just horrible to men, when it's not true, okay? So they're putting the fear of God into these guys, making them think that, like, you know, women are terrible people. And if some of these guys are socially anxious anyway, that's going to make them even more socially anxious. Like, if they've got this image in their head of women being just these horrible, nasty people, it's going to make them more scared to approach women. So they do not help in that sense. Also, the fact that, like, I mean, Myron Gaines and Fresh and Fit and all that, most of the advice they're giving men is how to get laid. It's not how to get a girlfriend. It's not how to find love, okay? And, they've been criticised by other men for this, okay? Other men have criticised them and said, like, you know, Myron is always talking about how to get sex with women, but he never talks about love, okay? Because Alison said, like, oh, she thinks a lot of these men want to find love, but it's like, well, if they do, watching something like Fresh and Fit isn't a good idea. And getting back to, like, right, it's not a good idea. And like, they say, like, oh, but the women, the advice that women are getting is to stay single, and that's empowering or something. And I have to say, like, I don't actually see that. I mean, I know it depends, like, what content you're looking up. But Alison said that this propaganda for women is everywhere. And it's like, I have not come across any channels specifically telling women that they should stay single. I've come across channels where they're saying you shouldn't be like judged if you're happy. You know, if you're single, you shouldn't be sort of run down for that, or if you're happy being single, that's okay. Okay, but I haven't come across any channels of women being told that you should stay single, that you must stay single, or that it's better. Yet in the red pill community, some of them do actually blatantly tell men that they shouldn't get married or have serious relationships. Okay, Alison said that the propaganda for women is everywhere and it's man-hating, while the red pill is not anti-woman. And I think, well, I completely disagree with that. I don't think most of the propaganda out there for women is anywhere near as hateful as the red pill community. I mean, once again, they have a rapist on their show sit there and laugh about it, okay? These are meant to be influencers for young men, and they sit there with somebody who commits the most horrific abuse, and that's supposed to be, like, okay, that's meant to be acceptable for these people, okay? And obviously, you know, once again, supporting somebody like Tay after hearing, like, the stuff he's accused of, okay. Alright, the red pill is very hateful, and that's why it annoys me when they get angry at people like Lauren Southern, Shoe on Head, or any of the other women that have, like, spoke out against the Manosphere, because these women are not anti-male. No, they're not being horrible to the young men that look up this content. It's more the actual content creators, and it's more the influencers that are being criticised, and people have every right to criticise them, but also blaming women that they don't want to be part of a community that's extreme, that hates them, that comes out with like this radicalised misogyny, and somehow twisting that as, oh, you hate men if you don't support the Manosphere. It's like, no, it's that most of the Manosphere hates women. But also, it just slightly bugs me as well. It's like there's this attitude that if you want to support men, you've got to dislike women. You have to not support women. Like, Shoe on Head said once years ago, she said when she thinks about like the radical feminists that said all men are potential rapists and toxic masculinity and all that, she said she would automatically think of her dad or think of any, all the important men in her life, because, it automatically triggered something like, no, this isn't fair, this isn't right to say this about all the good men in her life. That's what she said. And I would think the same when people say extreme bad stuff against men. I would think the same, okay? But when I've heard extreme radical misogyny, and I used to listen to MGTOW, the Men Going Their Own Way community, which I think is the worst for demonising women and female nature, and a lot of the extremists in the red pill community do it as well. And when I used to hear that, I used to think about my mum and my aunties and my nans and, and myself, okay? So they annoy me slightly with this attitude of, like, if you're going to stick up for men, you should support all these communities. It's like, oh, so what you're saying is if somebody's going to stick up for their dad, brothers, or the important men in their life, you should push your mother, aunts, and all the important women in your life, the woman who risked her life to bring you into the world, you should push her under the bus to support your hate group. It's like, no, I'm good on these women for saying, do you know what, I've had enough, the Manosphere's toxic.
It's whatever the Department of Homeland Security uses to redirect men. That's what they want. They want them to go to these, good man project, male feminist spaces, where men lay in pools and cry in each other's arms, because they don't want them to actually seek help. Even if the help they're seeking may not be ideal. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, they don't want to... Yeah, I think you're right. It is a fundamental difference. The narrative that women are getting is one of hatred and contempt towards men. And the narrative and fear. And the narrative that men are getting is women like this, so if you do it, they will like you.
Yeah, and also be aware of these bad things that women do. Like, look out for gold diggers, for example.
Yeah, fair enough. Like, there are bad women. Yeah, I get what you're saying. It's just that I think that, honestly, the narrative of men oppress women is leading to women being more and more terrified of being in any kind of relationship with a man, which is leading to the content, like the triumphal singledom content, which is a self-reinforcing negative thought spiral that is making it more and more difficult to find women who are in any way interested in a relationship with men. It has nothing to do with freedom. It has everything to do with women are choosing to lock themselves in a freaking mental crate when it comes to men. And the problem is that, in my opinion, the red pill content is looking at the situation and saying, well, men, if you just go to the gym, do this other stuff, you can somehow strong arm your way through the situation. But the honest to God truth is that women need to man up. They need to stop being afraid, and they need to stop constantly consuming narratives of fear.
Okay, first of all, this claim that women are getting the message from, oh, feminism and society that men are bad and you should fear men. It's like, I can tell you now, the thing that has made me worry the most about how many misogynistic men are out there, how many men actually don't really think that women are equally as important as men, how many men are frightened of women succeeding and want you to fail, how many men don't take women seriously, and how many men actually, like, even advocate for abuse against women. The community that has made me sort of worry more about that is actually the Manosphere and Red Pill community. Now, I still do not judge the majority of men on those communities, that I believe they're only a small amount of men, and luckily, I mean, the majority of men I know, and I've always known, are good people, but the community that has made me concerned about that is actually the Manosphere and Red Pill community. Like, feminists have never ever convinced me that that there's a lot of men out there that would want to oppress you. It's like, it's the Manosphere, the Red Pill community, even the Christian conservatives that all sit there talking about taking women's rights away, stopping women voting. They do not see women as equal to men, and they do not want women to be seen as equal to men. And when I say equal, no, I don't mean the same, okay? I'm not blank slate theorist, I'm not saying they're the same. I just think equally important and both deserving of equal rights, okay? It's the Manosphere that's made me think this way, right? But also, I've noticed this with other, some other women that I've listened to on YouTube, that some of them, they seem to have a more negative opinion on men because they're talking about the men online. They're talking about the Red Pill community, and they seem to, like, some of them talk as if that's the majority of men. Like, when they say stuff like men hate women, or, men want to take women's rights away. I mean, most of the time, like, if you listen to them, they're not talking about what they've heard from feminists. They're talking about from what they hear online from the Red Pill community. This is what I mean when I say it's like they're the ones that are trying to prove radical feminists right, and that they're the ones that are more likely to push women in the direction of thinking, like, oh yeah, well, we do need feminism, obviously. Look at all these guys that, like, still hate women, okay? But also, like, Brian says, like, oh, they teach men to look out for some bad behaviour in women. It's like, no, a lot of them are actually just outright trying to say that women are bad. And a lot of the content creators that are trying to say women are bad are actually kind of hypocritical and, I think, kind of projecting their self onto women, to be honest. Like the claim that women can't love you very deeply when, like, I mean, this is coming from Myron Gaines. Can he love a woman, like, when he's got such a deep hatred of them? No. Or the claim that women only view men as utilities when it's actually them who, they're like, oh no, we don't want to know about a woman's personality, like, because we don't like women. It's only beta males that want to listen to women, so we only want her for, like, sex, a trophy girlfriend. Maybe you wanted to have your kids, but you wanted to shut up and just be like your mum and do housework and all that for you. It's but also they sort of, like, some of the advice, I think, it's more likely to lead men, if men follow this advice, it's more likely to lead them to finding toxic women, because they sort of are telling guys, instead of telling men to sort of find a nice, kind, caring, loving woman, they seem to be telling men that, like, all women are these insensitive, horrible, selfish creatures, and then sort of telling these men that, like, in order to have a relationship with a woman, you've got to put your foot down, you've got to be in control, you've got to tell her what to do or else she's going to walk all over you, you mustn't ever show any weakness because women hate weakness. They're encouraging these guys to view their future partner as an enemy. And I think, well, first of all, if you're going to convince these guys that women are just these horrible, selfish creatures, I think some of these guys are more likely to pick toxic women because they're not expecting any better. But also, if you're going to teach them to go into a relationship viewing the woman as an enemy, like, you're not going to be able to love her if your guard is up all the time and you're tense all the time and you're like, oh god, I've got to put my foot down, I've got to make sure I'm strong so she doesn't walk all over me, I mustn't show any weakness. Like, you're you're not going to be able to care for her, and she's probably going to get fed up of it and not want a guy like that. Some of the advice is incredibly childish. It's, I would say, abusive. It's almost like they're like, well, we've got to run women down and put women down, because if they have too high self-esteem, they'll think they're better than us, so we have to put them down so they think we're the prize. Or these guys will actually outright say stuff like that women have to see that they can be replaced at any moment, and you have to keep them on their toes. They give advice like flirt with other women in front of them to make them jealous and stuff like that. And I kind of think, like, this is incredibly childish. When you bear in mind that these content creators that are giving this advice, they are not like naive 20-year-old lads. They're like guys in their 30s or even older, okay, that should know better, okay. It's like, if you've got a good personality, a good character, you shouldn't need to use manipulation tactics to get a partner. Or if, like, they say stuff like women like bad men all the time. That's not true. The majority of women do not want to be treated badly, okay? But if a woman actually did have some problem that makes her actually attracted to bad men, well then, instead of giving guys advice on how to treat a woman badly, I would say, like, that woman needs to get some sort of help, or she needs to do some self-reflection to realise why she's attracted to bad guys. Not a case of, well, all men should start acting bad, then they can be attractive to these women. It's stupid. It's so goddamn stupid. Okay, Brian says, like, oh, but they don't have any alternative. It's like, well, okay, that's a fair point, but it still doesn't mean that, like, you can't criticise their community, or that, if they're giving advice that is harmful to men, like, we're still not good. Saying, like, well, it's the only community there is. It's like, well, if it's toxic, it's not helping anybody.
Let's listen to more of
More of Lauren's conviction. Yeah. Binaries don't work. These binaries do work. You just did it wrong. That's the main criticism I've seen of that Mary Harris article, which, was great, emotional for me to do. I couldn't have written it myself. I couldn't have published that myself. It would have been too difficult for me to talk about. But I let her do with the information what she will. And one thing I would say to that is, I have thought about this so much. What if I just didn't work at all? What if I married a local boy in my community? What if I didn't date anyone before I dated my husband? What if I followed that trad listicle? Perfect. Would my fate have been any different? Would I not have ended up with a single
Are we talking about a listicle? You were being, this wasn't facetious on your part?
Well, no, I think she's making fun of the notion of building a typical marriage. Like, I don't want to call it traditional, because the word traditional has, for some reason, a politically charged connotation that goes with it. But, like, because, like, look, I know regular people that like get married and they have kids, and they're not shouting to the mountaintops that they've made like a political decision. They've simply made a decision that fits their lifestyle and their desire for a certain arrangement. Sometimes the woman works and the man stays at home, but most of the time they're either both working or the man is working. That's just the way it is. There's not, like, no one's saying it has to be this way. No one is saying it has to, like, that if you break these rules, you won't be happy. Like, literally, Lauren is creating straw man and tearing them down. Like, this is what they do. They create a dude or a scenario, and then they tell you what that person's opinions are, make them sound absolutely ludicrous, and then tear them down with a, well, obviously that's not going to work. And it's like, but people make it work all the time. Like I said, I know people who have, 4 or 5 kids and only the man works. And, they don't all have cell phones, but they are happy and they have everything they need, and you make it work. So it's not like people just have a way of coming together and making it work. No one is saying there are rules. No one.
Well, a lot of the tradcons online, they do seem to have these certain rules. Well, like the gender roles, where the woman's supposed to be at home, she's meant to be the homemaker, the man's meant to be the provider, and the woman is supposed to submit, and the woman is meant to be feminine, and the woman is meant to be ladylike. They do seem to have certain rules, that they, well, at least rules that they suggest that they think is best for the marriage, for men and women to work in peace and harmony and yin and yang and complementing each other kind of thing, right? Okay. And people say oh, but she shouldn't be blaming the lifestyle choice. It's not the lifestyle choice. It's the guy she picked, or say that she effed up. But the thing is, it's I do agree that if a partner's abusive, he's going to be abusive whatever. It doesn't matter what lifestyle choice they have, or whether she's at home or whether she's at work. If he's an abuser, he's going to be an abuser because he's the one with the problem. Okay, it doesn't matter what lifestyle choice you have, right? But I think why these online communities can make it harder, can make it more dangerous for women if they're leading the trad life. And when I say more dangerous for women, I will just point out that, like I've said before, women can be just as abusive as men. There's just as many men who get into abusive relationships with women as the other way around. But I'm just saying, if it is a woman who is in a relationship that's abusive, the reason why I think some of these online communities, well, a woman listening to some of these online communities don't help, is because one, and this is like the Manosphere, Red Pill community and Christian conservatives, all of them have this biased, men are good, women are bad attitude. You can say they don't, but yes they do. They're very biased and sort of blame women for everything. I mean, we've heard so many times about how all divorces are women's fault and women break up the family, and the assumption is that in a marriage a man can do no wrong. Okay, and they're always very critical of women and not critical of men. I do think that what can happen is if a woman gets too ingrained in these online communities where they're always being told like that it's always the woman to blame, it's always the woman that should try harder, women can internalize this, and I do think this is what happens to some of these red pill women. I mean, of course, you get people like Pearl Davis who just uses it to her advantage. I mean, she's worked out that obviously that by throwing the female gender under the bus and like saying whatever radicalized misogynist men want to hear gets her a lot of money and attention, and thinks it makes her look like she's a bit better than the other women. But anyway, I do think women who listen to this do internalise this. I mean, we know that the men who listen to this have a very, well, men are good and women are always the bad one attitude because they've been brainwashed. And I think the women get brainwashed as well. Okay, and when it comes to the conservatives, well, a few of them, they talk about how the woman should submit to the man. All right. Now, I understand that not everybody who believes in the woman being more submissive, is like, it's not all of them are like coming from a place of thinking the woman should be controlled, or that the man should be like, not considering his wife, or that he should have everything his own way and not listen to the wife. I mean, I do know that, like, most of them who say that are not thinking that. But the problem comes is if somebody is with an abusive partner, if the woman has internalized this about how, you women need to try harder because, everything's the woman's fault, and the man is good, the woman is bad, you've got to submit. If there's problems in the relationship, you're not submitting hard enough. I do see how that can have an effect on the woman and make it harder. But also, if it's a traditional relationship where the woman is relying on the man financially, it's going to be harder for the woman to get away. Okay, now I do kind of think in Lauren Southern's case, I mean, she does come across like, I mean, quite sort of worldly, like, quite a strong person, is how she comes across. So, well, some woman, like, I mean, if she'd never had a successful career herself, didn't have any money to fall back on, like, I mean, a woman like that may actually be trapped in an abusive relationship. Okay.
All right, let's.
All right, so this is online content is mistaken for reality. Let's find out.
It's interesting. I was thinking of what you just said on the way over here because, and I understand why Francis asked the question. I understand exactly why you answered it the way you did, because we are like geriatric millennials. We just caught the very end of the.
Less of a geriatric.
Mate, 42. What can I say? Anyway,
babies
and
just children. Okay.
When I see stuff on the internet, when I see people on Twitter saying stuff about relationships, I've been married 20 plus years at this point, right? I just go, well, no one can possibly believe this crap. Right? That's what I think when I see stuff on the internet. When I see various influencers talking about how to have a marriage, and I just go, no, this is insane. No one can possibly believe this, and I'll swipe to the next thing. But what I increasingly realize, this may sound like a really stupid thing to say, but increasingly talking to young guys that work with us and all the rest of it is like, your generation, that's your reality. You don't have anything to compare it to quite often, unless you have some personal experiences, seeing your parents and stuff like that. People are taking this stuff literally.
Oh, absolutely, they are. And I think also the easy solutions come from a generation of young people who did grow up in broken homes in a lot of cases, and they want to think in their head, there is an easy solution to this. This shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't have grown up in a broken home. There should be steps I can take to prevent myself from experiencing this. Or they'll get so bitter about it, they'll say, actually, there are no steps you can take. It is just, all women bad, all men bad, marriage shouldn't exist. It's a lot of pain. A lot of pain people have that is coming out in.
So they experience something horrific and they want there to be steps to take to avoid it. And that's a problem? Like, seriously, how is that a problem? But also, calling out this generation, this younger generation, as living not in reality. All right, feminism is living not in reality, right? Believing that men oppress women, but then somehow all you do is complain about men oppressing women to men is not living in reality, right? All of these rad femmes
who talk about, oh, they hate men, they want to live in a world without men, and yet all they do is complain about it. They don't take any step, not living in reality.
Okay, how many radical feminists are there that want to live in a world without men? You know, I'm just curious.
All right. There's a lot of women who aren't living in reality. And there's a lot of people who are invested in manufacturing a completely false reality. And it didn't just start with social media. Social media may be a force multiplier for this artificial reality. But the start was when, I guess maybe World War I, maybe before that, with the Declaration of Sentiments, where they realized that sex war is a money spinner. It can sell all kinds of concepts. It can sell all kinds of goods. It is essentially a fundamental driver of consumerism, sex war. And now we are experiencing basically the end of that, like the end of the boom. This is where the sex war deflation comes. Like it's where it's no longer working. The bubble has gotten so big that the only thing it can do now is pop, right? So, but that was unreal. Like we have generations upon generations upon generations of academics who constructed an entire house of cards around sex war, around this idea that men oppress women. It's all a bunch of bullshit, and a good part of our foundation is complete bullshit. Academia is supposed to provide an intellectual foundation for society, and everything that it does with sex, outside of a few outliers, is complete bullshit. So don't talk about that somehow the Zoomers are living in unreality. We've been living in unreality for generations now. Right? We've been living in a freaking advertising jingle. We're pretending that has the same kind of wisdom as the stuff that came out of the Bible. Right? And I'm not a Christian. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that the document of a group of people who lived through the fall of possibly a civilization, lived through a lot of shit, might have some value in it. A hell of a lot more than a jingle about sex wars that sells freaking cigarettes. Right? Okay. Now that's what we've been living in. And again, social media might be a force multiplier, but the lie was already there. Okay.
Yep.
And how are you offering anything? Is this woman offering anything?
No, it's just like she basically, okay, so she says the internet has done this. It makes men say women are bad and women say men are bad. But that's not really true. And just to your point, like the internet may be a force multiplier, but the narrative that men are bad is way older. And what's happening with men is not that they're being told that women are bad, but they're seeing what women are saying about them and they're getting angry about it. This is like look, I've said this for many years now. The red pill would not exist if it weren't for feminism. There would be no red pill. There would be no Manosphere. There would be no Andrew Tate. There would be no Fresh and Fit if it weren't for feminism. And it just keeps doubling down, and you're just going to keep getting more and more of these kinds of people. Like you had Warren Farrell in the 1960s. He was probably the nicest guy, right? Totally soft and polite. And now you have Andrew Tate. Do you think that's an accident? Like this is what you're going to continue to get. And the more you say on both sides, which is what this is, the more of that you're going to get, because it's just like, a bully finally gets his comeuppance from the kid that he's been bullying, and then you show up and you punish both of them. You're just going to make the kid resent you because he was being bullied. So, you know what I'm saying? So like this is,
the corruption started with men oppress women.
Yeah, that's where it began.
And
I mean, Lauren Southern doesn't seem to, like, she thinks of feminism as slut walks and sexist air conditioning. Sorry, but that was like the easiest shit to debunk. It's not that. It's the oldest story of men oppress women all throughout history or in these foreign countries. It's just not true. And that's the problem. So men reacting to this and you blaming them is ridiculous. Because I don't think men hate women. I think that, and I've said this too, if women said that they were sorry for how they've been treating men for as long as they have, men would immediately figuratively put down their weapons. They're like, okay.
Well, what weapons are those? Mild criticism, really?
Basically, yeah, they're mild.
Okay, to be clear here then, you're saying feminism attacked men first. There would be no red pill community if it wasn't for feminism. Feminism started the lie that men oppress women. So just to be clear here, the attitudes of the red pill community, which is basically that women shouldn't vote, they don't like women to be successful in careers, if they're all stay-at-home mums, they should be a complete doormat and do whatever the man says and let the man cheat on them, and women are inferior, women are less involved, women are less logical, everything in the entire world is women's fault. And you don't think that there were any men who had that attitude before feminism? That attitude only came out because feminism, made this false claim that there were guys like this that would like to oppress women. Feminism made this false claim that some men wanted to oppress women, and then as a result of that, they responded by starting a red pill community where they say, yeah, you're right, we would like to oppress you. Okay, alright. I think it is pretty obvious there has always been some people with that attitude, okay? Men and women. People who just think that women are less, don't take women as seriously, obviously didn't want women to vote, or didn't think women are as clever as men, didn't want women to succeed. There has always been people with that attitude, okay? Now, since we've got the internet, you get a lot of them who can all, get in communities together where they can talk amongst each other and be like, oh, good, I found people who have got similar views as me, even though, the mainstream, community looks down on it. At least we've got this internet where we can all get together, okay? There have always been guys like this, okay? You can't just say, oh, this is just a response to feminism. There's never been people like this before. Okay, there have always been people with this attitude. Now, when it comes to, saying, like, were women oppressed in the past in the West? Okay, well, I would say yes, because women were given less opportunities than what men were. And yeah, obviously at one time women couldn't vote. Women had less career opportunities, and a lot of women, like, their only sort of option was to, like, marry a man and to be successful as a woman. It was seen as like, well, the more successful of a job the man has, the more successful you are. Okay. Like, they weren't considered as capable of doing stuff as, like, what the men were, and they were in a situation where they had to rely on a man. Okay. Now, this doesn't mean that I think that most men were ever evil oppressors who wanted power over their wives or were nasty to women or anything like that. Like, I mean, you know, I expect most men, you know, loved and cared for their wives and wanted to do the best for their wives. Of course, there are going to be some toxic relationships, but, you know, toxic people, that can be men or women, okay? But, you know, I don't think the majority of men were toxic or controlling of women. I just think that that's the way the society was set up, okay? I also do think that it is true that there's what some MRAs say is that women were like the protected gender, okay? Like, women had less opportunities than men, but women were more protected, okay? It wasn't women that were forced to go to war. If a ship was sinking, they would get women and children off first, okay? So women were protected as well, okay? So I do not think that women were hard, you know, I don't think women were being, like, mistreated, like, not most of them, okay? But in all societies, there are going to be, you know, some people that are disadvantaged, okay? Out of the way the system is, okay? I do think, like, if society was perfect before, feminism would never have arisen, okay? I think that women being given more options of what to do with their life, being given more advantages, and the opportunity to sort of see, like, what they can do in our society is a good thing. And I do think the amount of guys in the red pill community and Manosphere who sort of really are frightened of, like, women, like, being successful and really do need to believe that women are less than men is, you know, well, I originally thought it was a little bit sad. Now I kind of think, well, if they're bothered by female success, well, I don't care, you know, like, it's their insecurity, they should deal with that, okay? It's not taking anything away from men, okay? As for apologising, let me just make something quite clear, alright? I don't think anybody should be apologising for the gender they are born in. As I have said in previous videos, I don't think, you know, when I've heard about schools in Australia that got boys to stand up and apologise for girls because of sexual assault, I think that is really, really wrong. I have said that, okay? Very few men and boys would sexually assault, and you shouldn't be, like, shaming all men and boys for that. And you know, people, men or women or girls or boys, shouldn't feel guilty for stuff that they did not do. All of us should only feel guilt or shame for stuff that we have done, okay? If I have hurt somebody, if I have wronged somebody, then I should feel guilty and I should apologise. I am not going to be told that I should feel guilty because some radical feminist out there said that all men are potential rapists. I'm not going to feel guilty because of some women that have made fake rape allegations. I'm not going to feel guilty because of some women that have taken their husbands to the cleaners in the divorce court. I am not going to feel guilty for stuff that other women have done when they are not me, okay? And likewise, I do not think that men should feel guilty. I don't think they should feel any guilt or shame for their gender. I think both men and women should feel proud of their gender.
Audience stuff, like part of my marriage, that was, it's hard for me to say abusive. I don't like using the word abusive because it's hard for me to even conceptualize it that way myself, because I very much still, even though horrible things happen, I still care for my husband. They're not hierarchical. It's very difficult, but there are reasons that I kind of have to talk about it honestly for my own sake. Towards the end of our marriage, I found a list in my husband's office while I was cleaning of every single media figure that had ever written a negative article about me, both right-wing and left-wing. And I was told that this was a contingency list of people he would contact to hurt my reputation if I disobeyed in the marriage.
Wait, what? So he never used it as a threat. You just found it at the end of your relationship? When the relationship was breaking down and presumably you're all saying hurtful things. So up to that point you weren't being abused. Is this okay?
Well, he had expectations of her to be a good wife or whatever, but she was trying to deliver on them. This is just her account, by the way.
Yeah, that's the
we don't
problem.
really know. It's just her side of the story. We don't know.
In a lot more ways than just this horrific audience capture. I think it's used by governments. I think it's used by abusive spouses. I think it's used as blackmail, corporations, all this kind of stuff. And it's the cancel culture of both sides is absolutely ruining our ability to have honest conversations in real relationships. And a lot of people think, they ask, why did Lauren do that marriage article? Why would she talk about her marriage so publicly? She could have kept it private. That's private matter.
Oh, this is the excuse.
Yeah, I actually thought so for a long time too. It was actually my husband that's...
All right, let's go back a lead. Well, I'll play it from here. It's actually my husband that.
The Duping Delight is not really selling this, Lauren. Look at that face.
Yeah.
She looks like she's getting away with it.
Well, let's see.
Influencers, both left wing and right wing, saying Lauren's divorced. She's this terrible person before I'd even spoken about it publicly. So my family was forced.
But you don't know that your husband did that.
When you say, like, people just saying, look, Lauren got divorced, that's not an attack. Like, Count Dankula was recently divorced. Did you know that, Allison?
Yeah.
And it's, it's sad. And he put out a statement. He's like, yeah, it's true. We're just like different people now. And I was like, that's too bad, man. Like, but people were talking about it, but they weren't attacking him. I don't think Dankula thought of it as, oh, I'm being attacked because people are talking about it. It's like, people are you make yourself into a public figure, okay? And people are gonna talk about you.
Okay, first of all, I find it quite amazing that these two have not even read the article stroke interview that Lauren Southern did talking about her abusive relationship, because they're sat here saying like, oh, was it not abusive till towards the end of the marriage? When actually, she has described about how what she claims is like, oh, she was being yelled at every day, that he was locking her out the house and she was crying and knocking on the neighbours' doors, that he was calling her worthless, okay? This is her words, okay, that she was in a relationship with an abuser. Now, you can say, oh, but we haven't heard his side of the story, but okay, but you know what? When it comes to the guys in the Manosphere, we haven't heard their wife's side of the story, when they claimed to have been in a relationship with a toxic woman either. And whether you like it or not, abusive relationships, they do exist. It's quite common. Mental or physical abuse, okay? It doesn't have to be violent. It doesn't have to be being beaten up. Alright. But also, as well, going on about how, well, Count Dracula's getting divorced, and he doesn't see it as criticism if people mention it. It's like, full well that men do not get judged the same way that women get judged in your communities. You know that. That's the whole point that Lauren Southern is getting at in the first place. I mean, your communities look down their nose at single mothers, do they not? But they're not going to say, like, oh, so Count Dankula, he's a single father now. Oh, what a loser, what a failure. Oh, you failed at your relationship. They would not say that about a man, and you know that. The assumption in your communities is one, that all marital problems are the woman's fault, or divorces are the woman's fault, and, regardless of why the divorce, the woman who's a single mother is considered a loser and is discriminated against quite heavily in your community, well, the man is absolutely fine. And if, any divorced men were to come out and say, oh, well, my wife was really toxic and she treated me bad and she did this to me and she did that to me, you lot would believe them. Well, somebody like Lauren Southern, you wouldn't, okay? That is the whole point that she's been getting at. That your community has the men always good, woman always bad kind of mentality. And these guys just act like complete idiots, and they're like, wow, Count Dankula, he's getting divorced and he's not taking mention of his divorce as criticism. It's like, full freaking well that, men aren't blimmin' hated like women are in your community. Again, if one of the guys in your community was slagging their, ex-wife off, or
saying that she was abusive or toxic to them, you would not make a 2-hour video going through it, complaining and saying, like, oh, he shouldn't be saying that, we haven't heard the wife's side, or, oh, why did he pick her? You know, you wouldn't be saying that. You knew that. That's the whole point, you know?